All right. So we're running slightly behind schedule today. Not too badly, though. So, that being said, welcome in to anyone that's hiding in here right now. I hope that you're having a good day and a good start to your week. Or as good a Monday as it can be. I know, Monday tends to be an unpleasant day for most everyone. So, the plan for today, of course, as per usual, will be opening here momentarily with our prayer. After which we will hop into our Bible reading, our verse of the day today, coming from 2 Corinthians 3:6. Then we shall carry on with the book of Psalms, with Psalms 54. After which, it's a Media Monday, so we're going to watch some videos. I got a couple of videos lined up. As you know, that means they're going to be nerdy. And they're going to be the kind of stuff that I enjoy, but it happens. After which, I don't know, we might game a little bit later today. We'll find out. We're kind of playing that by ear. But, the big thing is for today, hopefully we won't have any issues during the stream. We are on, like, day 3 in a row of inclement weather here in Oklahoma. Day 2 in a row of tornadoes. So, that's always fun. Kind of weird for us to get them this late into the season. Typically, we don't get them once we get into November. That, like, October at the latest. Even October's kind of unusual, but getting them in November, that's downright abnormal. And we have had several of them lately, which is... oh boy. But hopefully our connection shall not struggle too much. It won't give us any trouble today, so we can start our week off right. Welcome in, Uncle Dan. Things are well here, well enough. Definitely be praying for those affected by the tornadoes here in Oklahoma. I have been thankfully spared it, other than my sleep. Which, so be it. Thankfully, last night, my sleep wasn't disrupted. Since it wasn't until like 6 this morning where we had tornado warnings here this time, rather than like 2 a.m. like we were the day before, which was wildly unpleasant for my sleep schedule. Every time I was just about to fall asleep, there'd be like a super loud crack of thunder right outside my window that'd startle me. And then, whenever I was about to fall asleep, then the tornado sirens started going off, and I was just like, dang, man, I can't catch a break. But we slept well last night, so there's that, at least. Also, Uncle Dan, well, no, I won't interrogate you. I should not interrogate anyone on who did it. But... we do have an update. I finally figured out what was wrong with like how we used to have that little thing up at the top where it was keeping track of the funding towards our computer. I don't know who did it. Someone donated the entire amount by themselves anonymously. So, that was an obscene amount of money. Like I said, I don't know who it was. I don't know who's out here being an oil baron in this community, but I do greatly appreciate it. Unfortunately, the computer that we were looking at is no longer for sale. The company that makes it no longer had that deal. So, the current operating plan is, as it was donated through Throne lets you, whenever a product is no longer available but someone donated for it, it lets you put that money aside into a, like a total amount of money that you have, that you can spend. So we have set it aside, and I am working with Senor Rico, who is far more savvy when it comes to computers. And we are going to see if we can get a good computer built. We're going to wait for Black Friday try to make the money stretch further and try to get some better equipment than what we would have been able to have gotten normally if we can find a good deal. And we'll be using that money towards a computer because it was donated for a computer. We're going to use it for a computer. So, at some point in the next couple of months, we shall have us a new computer for stream, which shall allow us to play a fair bit more and a fair bit more effectively than we are at the moment, because this poor laptop can only handle so much. You know nothing? Okay. Like I said, I don't know who did it. It was done anonymously, so I have no way of knowing who donated that money. I just know someone donated a significant amount of money, and they did it for us to get a computer, so that's what we're going to use it for. I am immensely thankful to whoever that is. I can appreciate the wish to remain anonymous, so I shall respect it. But, it does mean a lot to me. I'm not going to get too sappy here. I dare not, because if I get it going, we'll never get it to stop. So, just, I'll say it one more time. I am immensely thankful. God bless whoever it was. I certainly appreciate it. And that money will be used to improve the stream, to make a good computer that will be able to keep up with us for hopefully a while. No crying. No, Uncle Dan, we shall not start the waterworks. Not this day. But I do suppose that's enough time. We shall get the ball rolling. Get our day started and kick the week off right, hopefully. Heavenly Father, we come to you today, and as we do, we ask that you open our hearts and our minds, that you provide us wisdom, guidance, and discernment, that we may better understand the lessons that it is that you intend for us to take from today, whether they be found here in the good word, or they be found in our day-to-day life in some interaction, some conversation, whatever it is you choose to teach us through today. We just ask that you grant us the insight to understand those lessons and make use of them, that we may grow as a Christian. We ask that you continue to provide a refuge for us, a place where we can gather with our fellow Christians in your might, where we can renew and refresh ourselves. We live in a world full of temptations and tragedies, with enemies all about us that will see us torn down and led astray, especially with the upcoming elections. There's a lot going on, and things are tumultuous. And we just ask that you grant us the strength to overcome each and every one of those challenges this day. We ask that you continue to lay your healing hands on each and every one of us. You know our personal struggles, whether we have admitted them out loud or not. You know what's in our heart. You know what we need. You know it better than we do. Sometimes we ask for the wrong things, and we just ask that you grant us those things that we truly need. But above all, we ask for your mercy and for your forgiveness, for we are not but sinners and fools, each and every one of us, and that your will be done in our life. In your heavenly name we pray. Amen. All right, so with our opening prayer done, our verse of the day today, 2 Corinthians 3:6, from the King James Version of the Bible, who also hath made us able ministers of the New Testament, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter killeth, but the Spirit giveth life. I've seen this one interpreted a few different ways. Some interpretations are interesting, I suppose, is the best way I can describe it. I should not throw too much shade at a fellow Christian's interpretation. But It is certainly one of those lines that gives for debate between the faithful. But the most important part at the end of the day is that we acknowledge that first part, especially that we hath been made able ministers of the New Testament, and that is what we are called to do. Some follow more strictly to the letter, some follow more loosely to the spirit. Some go way too far in one direction or the other. And it's important to find that good balance, but that should be enough preaching on that particular line for me today. Now, though, for the book of Psalms, with Psalms 54, to the chief musician of Neganoth, Maskil, a psalm of David, when the Ziphims came and said to Saul, doth not David hide himself with us? Save me, O God, by thy name, and judge me by thy strength. Hear my prayer, O God. Give ear to the words of my mouth. For strangers are risen up against me, and oppressors seek after my soul. They have not set God before them, Selah. Behold, God is mine helper. The Lord is with them that uphold my soul. He shall reward evil unto mine enemies. Cut them off in thy truth. I will freely sacrifice unto thee. I will praise thy name, O Lord, for it is good. For he hath delivered me out of all trouble, and mine eye hath seen his desire upon mine enemies. For strangers are risen up against me, and oppressors seek after my soul. They have not set God before them, Selah. That's a good line right there, and an important reminder, as it is true. There are strangers that seek to do us wrong, that have risen up against us as Christians, and oppressors that would see us torn down, led astray. They seek after our souls. Not only are they attempting to oppress us in a physical world, but many of them try to do so in the spiritual as well, by degrading our society around us and degrading our morals and trying to lead us astray. None worse than progressive churches that pretend as though they were following God, that they wear the skin of our faith and use it as a macabre puppet to try to trick Christians that know no better, to lead them away from God, which is a deeply saddening thing to see. They'll use any tool they can, be it political, physical, spiritual, whatever it is. They will attack you in any way they can. And all we can do is offer our prayer and praise up to God, that He should strengthen us, that He should cut down our enemy, and to continue to guide us toward a better future. But it is what it is. Now, though, we should get on to the Media Monday part of the Media Monday. Starting off with one of the technology videos, because these interest me.
It's quite sublime, and in this video I intend to tell you all about the process of freeze drying. Then, of course, I'll show you the parts of this machine and explain how they work together to turn ordinary ice cream into astronaut ice cream. And it's not just a dry subject, it's cool too. And it will leave you gasping for air. But first, a friendly word of warning. Unless you want to absolutely wreck your YouTube recommendations, do not, under any circumstances, click on any recommended videos you may see next to this one about freeze drying or freeze dryers. You will open quite the rabbit hole, which, unless you're big into the prepper community, you might regret. And on that note, it makes me retch a little bit whenever I say it out loud, but I do know that I am I hate it so much. An influencer.
I
But
fully
I'm really
understand,
not
and
about
I
people
won't call
wasting their
myself
money,
that.
So I'm gonna come right out of the gate and say you should almost certainly not buy one of these. And to be clear, not because it's a bad product. This is not. I have relatively few complaints about this thing. It works reasonably well, and honestly, I think it's actually pretty remarkable that it's a product you can buy and have in your home.
You were never a fan of that
But
term?
it's just
Yeah.
way too expensive to be a rational purchase.
Yeah,
I
I can't blame you on that, Blake. I vehemently avoid
with
it.
certainty that I would absolutely regret spending the money I spent on this machine. I won't bury the lead. This was nearly $3,000, which is way too expensive for what I think is mostly a toy. And if you're earnestly looking to store large amounts of food for long-term safekeeping, I think you'll find much wiser and much less irritating ways to spend your money and time. But we'll get to that later. First, what is freeze drying? Also known as lyophilization or cryodesiccation, it's a process of removing moisture from, well, technically anything, but most normally food. And we do it not just because it does funny things to food, though that's certainly one of the reasons, but also because it prevents spoilage for incredibly long periods of time. Food
What are those
spoilage
gummy
typically
bears
happens
doing? I
thanks
don't
to
like
one of
that.
two
They're
things.
alive.
Oxidation of fats and oils can turn some foods rancid, and since there's oxygen in our atmosphere, that tends to happen with time. But more pertinent to freeze drying, just as you and I gotta eat, the world's microorganisms like bacteria and mold do too. And they'll happily chow down on the same foods we eat, decomposing them in the process and, in many cases, leaving that food unsafe for us to eat. Those microorganisms, though, don't just need food to stay alive, they also need water. So if you can remove enough moisture from a food product, you'll end up with food that's simply too dry for those microorganisms to exist on. And so it doesn't spoil.
That's why
Now,
hardtack.
there are plenty of ways to make.
For those of you that don't know about hardtack is a thing that humans have been making for a long time. It's basically two ingredients: water and flour. When cooked, it becomes so dry that most microorganisms cannot survive in it. Also, it tends to become so dry and so hard that there are reports of it having successfully stopped musket balls when held in the pocket of soldiers in past wars. So it's a food and it's armor. Don't eat it dry, you need to soak it. They're not very tasty.
You've probably seen food dehydrators, which turn fresh fruit and vegetables into dried fruit and vegetables. And once dried, that food is much more resistant to spoilage from microbial growth.
That is a good way as well.
That process uses heat, and adding sufficient heat energy to dehydrate foods in our atmosphere ends up changing the molecular structure of some food components, which alters not only the nutritional value, but also the taste. Now, there are plenty of food preservation techniques out there. There's canning, there's home canning, though personally I find calling that canning to be somewhat jarring. There's curing, there's pickling, there's fermenting, there's freezing, and a lot of other stuff.
I wish someone had not told you this song on YouTube. It now lives rent-free in your mind. Uh-oh.
Flavor, structure, and nutritional content of the food. In many cases, it does pretty cool stuff. A lot of preservation techniques impart unique flavor profiles that we actually like, and there are endless cultural traditions out there which stand the test of time on flavor alone. But if you're looking to preserve food without actually affecting its flavor or nutritional content, well, your options are limited. That is, of course, unless you do a little cryodesiccation. You know about dry ice, right? Dry ice is the solid form of carbon dioxide, and it has a peculiar quirk. It doesn't melt into liquid. Instead, it sublimates directly from the solid form
It's already
into
stuck
the
in your head.
gaseous
You
form.
just
That's
this
why we
just
call
ensured
it
it will
dry
never leave.
ice.
What
It's
song
ice,
is
though
this? I'm
extremely
curious
cold
now.
ice, which can't get anything wet because it doesn't melt. It just shrinks. Now, usually you can't get water to do that. Water is wet. Or does it make things wet? Are we settled on that? Anyway, frozen water doesn't sublimate into water vapor. It melts into liquid water.
Terrifier
Don't take my
Christmas
word
from
for it, just watch this
Terrifier
ice
3. I've never heard of it.
It's melting. Except this isn't always the case. Wet ice, ordinary frozen water, will actually sublimate in certain conditions. If the ambient temperature surrounding some massive ice remains below the freezing point of water, ice will slowly sublimate and transition directly to the vapor's form. This is probably not a perfectly scientifically correct way to explain it, but it's similar to how liquid water will evaporate slowly and disappear
An
even
indie
at cool
film
room
series,
temperatures.
Terrifier 3
Solid
has set a
water
record for
actually
how
does the same
much
thing,
it
and
made as an
you've seen the
unrated
effects of
movie.
this
Oh dear.
yourself. Freezer burn, where food stored in the freezer for a long time develops dry spots, is the result of sublimation.
I worked in
The
a health
moisture
food
in that
store
cup of
once. A guy
milk or
asked me
whatever
if I
just
melt dry
sublimated
ice,
away.
can I take a bath
And
without
if
getting
you've got a
wet?
bin
Stephen
of
Wright.
ice
Oh
in your
no.
freezer and noticed that over time the ice cubes seem to shrink, that's also sublimation in action. You've probably noticed, though, that the process is very slow. It can be sped up, which if you live in cold parts of the world like I do and you drive a car, you might have actually noticed. Drive at high speed on a very cold day, and over time, little bits of ice stuck to the windshield end up just shrinking until they disappear. And that's sublimation happening, helped along by the huge volume of air which keeps flying past that ice as you drive. But there's a way to make it happen even faster than that. Expose ice to a vacuum. Which brings us back to the freeze dryer. This thing may look like a
He's
cross
known
between
for
a
his
tiny
one-liners.
washing
Fair,
machine and a
fair.
piece of
That is
plastic,
an
but it's not
interesting
just
one.
looks. The huge rubber ring
I have a
on the front of
telescope
this
on the
machine
peephole of
engages
my
with the
door,
plexiglass door
so
to
I can
form
see
an
who's at
airtight
the door
seal.
for 200
And that
miles.
door
Oh
is
no.
very thick. In fact, it's so thick that it is strong enough to
Wow.
withstand the roughly 1,500 pounds, or 680 kilograms, of force the atmosphere is going to exert on it when this here vacuum pump sucks all the air out of that chamber.
Okay,
Because
but
all
can it
this thing
sustain a
is a vacuum
bullet?
chamber.
If
But
I
it's
shoot the
also a
door of it,
freezer.
will it survive?
If we look inside, we'll find that a compressor and fan-forced condenser live in the bottom of the machine. And this arrangement of parts is a very typical setup for small self-contained refrigeration units you might find in a commercial kitchen. But the evaporator, the part of a refrigeration circuit that gets cold, is integrated into the walls of the vacuum chamber. Now, that could be seen as just a practical way to make a freezer. If we ignore the whole "it's also a vacuum chamber" part, this might as well be a weird take on a chest freezer. It's just on its side and a cylinder rather than a box. But specifically for freeze drying, it has a practical purpose too, which I'll explain later on. The basic process this machine uses to freeze dry things begins simply by freezing whatever you want to freeze dry. When you start a cycle using its touchscreen interface, it turns on the condensing unit and begins cooling the chamber. The actual stuff you intend to freeze dry has to be placed on these trays, which are sized just right to fit within the rack structure sitting in the middle of the chamber.
Aww.
That rack structure is more than meets the eye, but hold that thought for now. You
What
can
if I don't
choose
want
to
to hold
let
it?
the machine itself freeze the items on the tray, though that takes it quite a while. In my experience, something like 6 hours. So it's generally better to pre-freeze everything in an ordinary freezer first. That speeds up the freeze drying process. It still takes a lot of time to freeze everything, and it's kind of awkward to fit these in some freezers, but generally it's better to do that. The machine has a temperature sensor attached to that rack structure so it can determine the temperature in the chamber and, to some extent, the contents in the trays. Being made of thermally conductive aluminum and also being in physical contact with these trays, that sensor's reading will be influenced by the temperature of the food. And once it has reached the target freezing temperature, the machine starts a timer. Both the target temperature and that timer's length are customizable. But currently, I have the machine set to a 0 Fahrenheit target, that's minus 18 Celsius, typical freezer temperatures, and the extra freeze timer is set for 90 minutes. Once those 90 minutes are up, all of the moisture in whatever you're trying to freeze dry will have frozen solid. And the machine's next step is to switch on the external vacuum pump by energizing the power outlet on the back of the machine. This vacuum pump is quite a beast and can evacuate the air in the chamber very quickly. Generally, within a minute, the pressure drops below 2,500 millitorr, which is about 0.05 psi. And for context, the atmosphere is 14.7 psi at sea level. From here on out, the machine will keep the vacuum pump running continuously, and it will keep the compressor running too. And now, the frozen water in all of the food begins to sublimate. Except, remember that whole thing about how sublimation is a really slow process? Well, it is. The vacuum conditions inside the chamber will speed it up, but it's still going to take forever if all we do is let the machine sit. So, here's where that strange rack situation comes into play. The racks are not just supporting the trays, they also contain heating pads. Bonded to the underside of each shelf, including the top piece, is a roughly 150 watt heating pad. And once the machine has reached a target pressure, it energizes those pads to heat the food in the chamber. Now, this might seem counterproductive. We just froze everything. Why would we heat it back up? Well, under a vacuum, frozen water behaves like dry ice does in our atmosphere. It doesn't melt, and so we can actually warm up the food, and that added energy means the water molecules in that food are vibrating more vigorously, which speeds up sublimation. The machine switches those heating pads on and off to maintain the tray temperature at roughly 130 degrees Fahrenheit or about 55 Celsius. It feels really weird that doing that doesn't melt the water in the food, but it doesn't. Here's a time lapse of the machine freeze-drying ice, and you'll notice that it's not melting, it's just shrinking and disappearing, leaving just a trace of dust, that dust being the minerals which were dissolved in the water behind. And now it's time to touch on something I said earlier. The compressor runs through the entire process, which means the whole freezer part of it is still working to cool the walls of the chamber, despite the fact that we're heating the food and there's effectively no air in there. What's going on with that? Well, for physics reasons, which I don't understand and won't even try to explain, the sublimated water vapor, which is freed from the food we're freeze-drying, is attracted to coldness and will deposit itself on the cold walls of the chamber. I would have thought the vacuum pump ends up sucking most of that water out, but that is apparently not how it works. Most of it just redeposits on the cold walls, and so you get quite a lot of ice buildup as the cycle continues.
Okay.
Aside from the bit of frost that formed at the beginning of the cycle, all that ice used to be the water inside the food that we're freeze-drying.
Makes sense.
Here's a fun fact. While those heaters do speed this process up, it still takes forever. This machine has typically spent at least 16 hours in the drying step of the process before it determines that it's done. It is not fast. However, once its cycle is complete, the machine will move on to extra dry time, another step you can change the length of if you like. And you might need to, as I'll explain later. But once that timer is done, well, it's done. The machine very faintly beeps at you to kind of get your attention, but all it does is turn off the heaters and the vacuum pump. The refrigeration circuit will continue to run until you acknowledge that it's done. And I believe that's just to make sure none of the ice which forms on the walls melts and gets on your freeze-dried stuff. Once you decide whether you want the machine to defrost for you or not, I'll explain that later, it shuts down, and it's up to you to open this drain valve and let air back into the chamber. Once the pressure is equalized, you can open the door and remove the product. The end result of this process is food which has everything it used to have in there except water. All the water is gone, but the proteins, starches, sugars, flavor compounds, Everything else is still there and relatively untouched. Most foods end up shrinking slightly, and some foods really do not survive this process all that well. But for the most part, you end up with strange results. The food, this used to be watermelon, becomes almost weightless, and the texture is radically different.
Doesn't
But
look
it's still
anything
the
like a
same
watermelon.
food, and if you eat some, you'll discover that it tastes exactly like you'd expect, but the mouthfeel is radically altered. And in many cases, it's so wrong that the food is quite unappetizing. But that food is now shelf stable for up to 25 years.
Holy.
It takes special packaging considerations to attain that extreme longevity. Mainly, you need completely airtight packaging with an oxygen-absorbing packet thrown in to make sure it doesn't oxidize. So do not take that as gospel. And at the risk of getting ahead of myself, I think this process is a little too variable to actually guarantee that the end result will be safe for anywhere near that long. But food preservation is not why I got this machine. I just wanted to play around with a freeze dryer and see what sorts of strange foods I could create with it. And after literal months of tinkering, I'm afraid that most of what I've done is ruin a lot of food. And in hindsight, that probably shouldn't be surprising. Given the mechanism in play here, I think it's fair to describe the process of freeze drying as accelerated freezer burn taken to completion. You forget about something in the freezer for a couple years, and when you dig it back up, the edges are all crinkly and gross, and that's literally what this machine does to food, but all of it, all the way through. Sometimes the end result is legitimately interesting, and plenty of fruits are strangely delicious once freeze-dried, like strawberries or pineapple. I'm surprised how much I like freeze-dried cantaloupe. It's got a nice crunch. And freeze-dried kiwi fruit was another smash hit, though quite sour. But most other things you freeze-dry end up being rather unpalatable, and so require
I have
further work
heard
to
that. Like, I've heard
reconstitute
that
into something
certain
less
candies
gross
are
if you
really good
actually want to eat
freeze-dried.
it. Take, for example, and I apologize in advance to the vegetarians and vegans watching, meat. This is freeze-dried sliced ham.
Oh
In
no.
its current state, it is nearly weightless, has a rough texture, and is quite brittle. You can snap pieces of it off quite easily.
Huh.
If you just eat this, which I have, it's disgusting. The dried meat has a quite off-putting, gritty texture, and to make matters worse, it eagerly absorbs the saliva in your mouth, and so it's kind of like you're eating damp sand. But what makes it even stranger is that it tastes exactly like ham. It's just a viscerally confusing experience, and I can't describe it any other way than just wrong. This here is a meal from McDonald's, which I threw in the freeze dryer because morbid curiosity got the better of me. It's just your
Why does it
standard
look the same?
cheeseburger meal, but with some McNuggets too. And the end result is incredibly weird. Give
It
this
looks the
container a
exact
good whiff,
same.
and it smells like the inside of a McDonald's. Get more specific, and you can make out the smell of the ketchup and onions on the cheeseburger. But the cheeseburger itself is now a rock-hard disc of misery.
Revenant,
And now
welcome
you will
in.
get the pleasure of
We're
watching my actual reaction to eating some of this food for the
So this is a guy that does technology reviews and whatnot, which I love dearly. It's simultaneously funny, interesting, and educational, so I approve. He bought a freeze dryer, so we're finding out one, about how freeze dryers work, two, the results thereof.
for the first time. All right, I lied a little bit. I have already tried the fries, and they are well, it's something like a shoestring potato chip, but it does taste like a McDonald's French fry.
The funny thing is, so the main reason you freeze dry something is to massively increase how long it can stay good. If you freeze dry McDonald's food, does that affect how long it can survive? Is it now able to, like, you could eat that 500 years from now? Because that stuff already stays good for an immense amount of time because it's all just chemical preservatives. Like, that's 99% of the ingredient is just chemical. So if you freeze dried it, does that mean it's good forever now? Or does it have no impact on it because, it was already 90% preservative and thus freeze drying it doesn't really make any difference? I don't know.
And it's a little too brittle. So
It's still garbage. Yeah, I mean,
great, but I haven't
McDonald's
tried anything
food
else.
fresh is barely
Let's see, what
considered food.
freeze-dried McNugget is. Oh, that's unpleasant.
He
Okay.
just snapped the McNugget in half.
Oh, there it is. It took a while for the flavor to come through. It's a McNugget, but it's like powdery. Not great.
Ooh,
And let's just, I don't know how I'm gonna do this.
powdery. That is not a word you want to hear
I don't really
describing
want to do
food.
this.
That crunch is obscene. Varkin, welcome in, my friend.
I mean, it tastes like a McDonald's cheeseburger. It really does, but it's wrong. Not a good experience. So, what can you do to reconstitute your freeze-dried food into something not gross? Well, the most obvious thing is to add water, but depending on
We'll give Varkin a quick shout out. I almost shouted myself out.
Very nice.
C and V are too close to each other, bro.
Good timing too, right in the middle of the
Of course, Varkin. Have you been, my friend? The crunch, that face. Yep. Sounded a bit crunchy for a burger. It's a freeze-dried burger, so it makes
it
sense.
can be weird. Perhaps the most surprising thing I accidentally discovered had to do with the ham. I thought the most logical thing to do was, of course, use a steamer to make some delicious steamed hams. But when I put the sliced ham into the steamer, within
Well, howdy,
moments,
happy
it started
trails.
getting darker, and by the end of just 5 minutes in there, it had cooked further.
Oh yeah,
and become the consistency
baby!
of
That's what I've
sugar.
been waiting for. That's what it's all about.
It was also pretty tasty, I won't lie. And so I guess I discovered a really odd roundabout way of making jerky from store-bought ham. But to get the ham turned back into the regular ham it used to be, well, simply soaking it in water for a while kind of worked, but it got unfortunately soggy in the
That's not ham.
process.
It is
Like,
ham.
I imagine if I had left the
It's
not
just-
freeze-dried ham in a bowl of water
You
for
know.
a half hour, it would have been a similar result. I have yet to test this, but I do want to try getting one of those cool mist humidifiers and
It's a
leaving
shadow,
freeze-dried
but he's-
product in the stream of mist for a while to see if that might be more pleasant. I will almost certainly be doing
Ham
more stuff
chips.
related to
I
this
know,
in the
ham
future,
chips
so be sure
indeed.
to subscribe to that channel if you haven't already. Another thing I haven't yet tried steaming is a steamed ham, but I do have this freeze-dried steamed ham handy, so let's do it. It's an Albany expression. Okay, let's steam a steamed ham. I got out my SimmerStat box. I bet you didn't think this was gonna come out again, but no, I'm using it right now. And I'm turning the heat down to about medium because I want to leave this in a pretty low heat. I hopefully don't want to cook it any further like what happened with the ham. I'm putting in the one that I already took a bite out of. And we'll throw in one of the nuggets too.
Wonder what ham jerky in a
How long should I
dehydrator
leave
would
it
taste
in there
like.
for?
I don't
No idea,
know.
but I'm gonna try 10 minutes, so tick, 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 tick. It's been 10 minutes, except I threw in some fries. I forgot about that. I'll give them a little more time. Ooh, I dripped some water on the McNugget. Let me just,
Not on the
that
McNugget.
does not bode well. It's still stiff. It's still stiff, but oh no, it's not good. And it has cooked further. Oh boy.
I like
I
the
think it's
immediate,
better
that's
than it
not good.
was. But it has cooked further. Let me turn that off.
Also, while I'm
Grab one of these
remembering to do so,
Oh, that's awful. I now have that set to low, so this should barely simmer at all. And we'll see if that makes a difference. Okay, there's 10 minutes.
You eat medium rare burgers? I mean, fair, I guess. Nothing wrong with that. Like, I mean, it's just a juicy burger at that point now. I've always preferred my burgers, like, more rare, on the rare side myself.
Steaming
So.
at very low. I did it again. Why did I do that? I'm just making a mess over here. Okay. No, this is still pretty dry, so it hasn't cooked further, so maybe if I let this go for like an hour, it would turn back into what I expect out of a chicken McNugget, which is not much, to be clear, but steaming apparently does not work. Hooray! There are some foods which can be freeze-dried and then unfreeze-dried pretty easily. Something that I found actually quite enjoyable was freeze-drying eggs.
I mean, yeah, for a steak, medium well is too far gone. Like, steak needs to be rare, medium rare. Like, those are the acceptable levels.
Into each one, and then I poked each yolk with a fork to.
Well done, hockey puck. Indeed, indeed.
Don't know if that was really necessary, but I figured it wouldn't hurt. Then I carefully put the eggy trays in my freezer. I bought these lids from the manufacturer specifically for making prep easier. It allows you to stack the trays in
I
your
don't mind a
freezer.
steak
If
rare
for some
sometimes.
reason
I
you
do
end up
prefer
thinking a
medium
freeze dryer is a
rare
good idea,
for them,
I
but
would say this
rare
is
is acceptable as well in my book.
But anyway, after spending the night in my freezer, I put the trays in the freeze dryer and ran a cycle. The next day, because may I remind you, this process takes an entire day.
Yes,
the
he has
machine was gone.
he has several
And the
lava
end
lamps. He's got
result is
3
a
of them.
much lighter tray filled with nothing but solids of egg.
You want to try blue one day? Blue what? Hold on. Now I'm confused. I'm curious. Blue what? What am I missing on?
You end up with a very fine powder. It's quite compressible, so I was able to shove all the eggs into this single jar.
Blue rare?
And to turn them back into regular
I have not
just
heard of
add
this
water.
before.
I never bothered figuring out what exactly the proper ratio of powdered freeze-dried egg to water is. I've just been eyeballing it. But it quite easily turns back into liquefied eggs. And just a bit of stirring. And they cook up just like eggs do. I scrambled some reconstituted eggs, and you would have no idea that they were ever freeze-dried.
Cook a blue steak, you sear a steak at very high for short time, resulting in juicy tender steak with a seared exterior and nearly raw center.
Which, fun fact, the French call it a robot culinaire. How delightful. Another actually kind of useful
A robot culinaire
is this. This used to be a half gallon of whole milk, but now it's powdered milk. This was made using the exact same process as the eggs. However, it's harder to turn this back into liquid milk.
Well, hi, Critter. How have you been, High Star? Welcome. How is your stream? How is it going? I hope that you all had a good time with Critter. Welcome in. I apologize. I can almost guarantee you it will not be as interesting here because we're just watching nerdy videos. But I hope that you all have had your enjoyment. Give you a shout out. Got your Indian elephant enclosure finessed and starting on an indoor enclosure from some little critters from Asia. I see, I see. I kind of figured that's what you were playing, but you know, still gotta ask, still gotta know how it went. No way you got to the part in the Underworld saga where they yell, "Captain, Captain," as the raid happened? Oh no. Totally not hyper-fixated. I don't know if I believe
Much
you.
of these solids are
I
milk
think you've
fat,
got an
which
addiction.
doesn't
I think
really
you
like
might have a
mixing with
slight
water.
problem.
But I wanted to try this specifically
But that is
because
funny, Star.
powdered whole milk is a surprisingly hard product to find in my area, and I don't normally keep milk in the house because it spoils too quickly for how I use it. Though perhaps the difficulty in getting this to dissolve in water explains why non-fat powdered milk is more common. Anyway, it will turn back into milk when mixed with water. It just takes quite a lot of mixing, and since it's milk, mechanical aids can end up frothing it, so it's tough. Speaking of freeze-drying liquids, though, another thing I did was freeze-dry some brewed coffee.
That being said, I guess I should explain what's going on here. First of all, welcoming everybody if you don't know me. I am Captain Joseph, previously of Tarshish, but not in some time now. So we're watching some nerdy videos for Media Monday, where this is a fellow who I quite enjoy, and he is reviewing freeze dryers and how they work and whatnot. So that's where we're at right now. He's been freeze drying stuff.
Instant coffee is really just dehydrated coffee, but most instant coffee is awful. So, since I have this high-tech anything dehydrator, I figured I'd make my own instant coffee, but with a twist. I froze the coffee as I prepare it with cream and sugar. So the end result should be truly instant coffee, exactly how I like it. The process was basically the same for eggs and milk. The end result of the freeze dryer is ridiculous. And if it weren't for the sugar, I'd be afraid of drafts in the room. But you just load it into a food processor and turn it into a powder. This is the result, which I haven't tried yet. Let's do that now. Okay, this will not be scientific. I just used the scale here and tared it with this empty mason jar, which then suggests there's 43 grams of coffee powder in here. I'm not 100% confident that this is 4
Oh,
or
I would
2
put
months.
sugar
I don't
in
remember. I
instant
think it's
coffee
only
or
2
cream.
because
I
of the
mean,
sugar in here. I would be really shocked if I only have 10 grams of sugar and milk fat.
it makes it
So I'm gonna
slightly
put
less
half of this in
horrific.
that mug. We'll see what happens. I'm not bothering to wait till this gets to a boil.
Why? Doesn't take that much longer, bro. Just let it boil.
So it's dissolving pretty well. It hasn't completely dissolved perfectly, but this does, other than the froth, look very much like how I brew my coffee. And it doesn't have that acrid smell that most instant coffee really does for me. So let me give it a taste. Be mindful of the spoon. This is very good. This is effectively how I take my coffee in the morning. I'm gonna call that a success. Yeah, it's got,
I mean, fair enough.
for whatever reason, the froth that's forming on here, it almost has a whipped hot chocolate consistency on the top, but it's very good.
Huh.
Am I going to actually make a bunch of this for future use? No. Now let's change gears. The main reason I bought this thing, aside from making a video, was to try freeze drying whatever seemed like it might be fun to freeze dry. But I learned pretty quickly that a lot of stuff
Looks like a
just
washer. Yeah, it
doesn't
kind of does.
really work.
It's got a similar
I knew
look.
some of that going into this. I didn't just buy a freeze dryer. I did some research into what can and cannot be freeze dried. So I knew that things with very little moisture content and high fat content just don't work. Chocolate, for instance, just ends up melting once the heaters turn on. Same goes for butter. But there were also a lot more duds than I
You
figured
saw
would be
the
case. In fact, it's been
Harvest
mostly
Right
duds.
cost
The very first
ages
round
ago.
of
Quickly
freeze
walked
drying
away,
that
but your
food
mom wanted one. I
included
mean,
all sorts of
see,
stuff.
here's the thing. This guy is doing this in a very clever way because you know what? You know what's a side effect of being a, as he called it earlier, an influencer? Any technology that you buy for something like this, like he bought this for this video, that's a tax write-off. This is his business. That harvest right is a business expense now. which means it's a tax write-off, which makes it super clever. Any technology this guy buys, if he reviews it and puts it on his YouTube channel, he can write that off on his taxes. Which is just, like, smart. And yes, you are correct. Sometimes they will also give you one to review. Like, if you get big in this kind of a category, some companies will just reach out to you and be like, here, have a free one of our equipment. Just please make a video on it. So, but he did say he did buy this one. I think he said it cost him $3,000 at the start of the video. But that's a $3,000 tax write-off. Which, smart.
Some of which I just thought would be funny. For instance, I wanted to freeze dry a Twinkie just because that idea was hilarious on its face. Sadly, I never got around to making freeze-dried refried beans. But anyway,
Freeze-dried refried beans
just didn't actually do anything or was completely ruined. The Twinkies just became rock hard and impossible to eat. The cream filling of the Oreos melted, and the cookies just turned stale. Little Debbie oatmeal cream pies had the filling become a powder, and the oatmeal cookie parts turned into the consistency of a cracker crossed with an old ginger snap.
Okay, that's the thing, though. None of these actually need to be frozen to increase their lifespan. These are all shelf-stable items. Like, these will expire after all of us are dead and dust. All three of these things will outlive us all.
None of that was
so freeze drying it really doesn't do anything.
Pastry is apparently never going to come out of a freeze dryer in a good way. That first round also included various fruits. Canned pineapple and peaches, in addition to a fruit cocktail, were done mainly because I already had some on hand and I was lazy. But I also bought some cut melon. And
is it storming for me? Yes, we're on like day 3 of storming over here.
There. The peaches freeze-dried perfectly.
You agree with the Twinkies, but what's the but? Let's hear it putting on Ritz. What's the but?
And the melon,
because you know I'm right.
Well,
those things are all gonna outlast us. They'll be here centuries after we are. They're like 99.9% chemical. They don't expire.
Well, it became clear it was rotting. The smell was awful.
Uh-oh.
That was on me, though. The instructions for the freeze dryer make it pretty clear that you don't want any product over the tops of the trays, and that melon was very much over the tops of the trays. It was just too big. Which leads me to my next little lesson. Dealing with these trays is just kind of annoying, and freeze drying liquid products is just not really fun. The easiest way to do it is to put the empty trays in the freeze dryer, then pull them out just enough so you can fill them in place, and then slowly push them back in and start the cycle.
Okay.
And actually, I do have to call out a really clever design feature here. You'll notice that the machine is leaning back somewhat. That's to allow water in the vacuum chamber to drain when it defrosts.
The Oreos and oatmeal cream pies don't expire? I mean, yeah, they're still like 99.9% chemical. They're not quite as bad as a Twinkie. A Twinkie is an unparalleled item when it comes to non-naturally occurring ingredients to naturally occurring ingredients in a food object. But like, yeah, those other ones are still like 90% chemical makeup, I'm fairly certain, and will likely outlive you. Now, the Twinkies will outlive you by the most, but, you know, it's just because, like I said, I don't think there's any human food that humanity has ever created that is less organic material.
Are leaning in the opposite.
Zombieland was quite a good show, or quite a good movie, I won't lie. The second one was okay, but the first one is...
Really good thinking. Still, dealing with liquids is irritating and means you're asking the freeze dryer to do the initial freeze, which makes the already very long cycle even longer. So,
the first one was great.
I'd be clever and order some ice cube trays with silicone bottoms and make ice cubes out of whatever liquids I wanted to freeze dry. So I made ice cubes of egg, milk, and coffee. This was a mistake. Probably through some combination of being too tall and not being in solid physical contact with the trays. Once the machine had finished, it turned out that the center core of every ice cube still had ice in it. So the eggs and milk, very ruined. Definitely not safe to eat. And the coffee, well, I guess I could have made coffee with it, but I ended up just sending it down the drain. Honestly, that was a real bummer. I really hoped this would be easier, but sure enough,
You haven't seen the
liquid product
second
in
one?
direct
You're not really
contact with
missing
the
anything,
trays
Remnant.
is what you have
The
to
second
do.
one is kind of
And
just
the
a
lessons just
meh.
kept on happening. During one freeze drying session where I tried such things as black olives, weird but okay, dill pickles, not good, carrots, surprisingly disgusting, yogurt, more weird than anything else, balls of seasoned and cooked rice, disappointing, and other stuff I'm sure I've forgotten, I had some lemon and lime slices in there. Those came out perfectly, and aside from the pucker factor, made for an interesting little treat. So later on, I was doing some other fruits and stuff and decided to put in both some sliced tangerines and mandarin oranges. And for some reason, neither of those actually dried to completion. Everything else in there came out fine, but the oranges did not. They had a good deal of their moisture removed, but after storing them in a Ziploc bag, by the next day the bag had condensation on the insides and the fruit had turned into mush. I can only assume the sugar content of this is just too high or something.
That would
And
be
remember how
the
that
assumption
first
I
run
would
of
make
freeze
as well.
drying had a can of fruit cocktail in there? The grapes in that fruit cocktail ended up being really interesting, so I went out to the store and got some fresh grapes to try. I had assumed the skin of the grape might be a problem, so I poked each and every one with a knife before freeze drying. I had both seedless green and red grapes in there, and, well, they barely dried at all. There was some unpleasant oozing coming out of the holes I made in the skin the
Yeah, you
whole
shouldn't have
time.
poked him, bro.
By the time the cycle had ended, they were still mostly grapes. So then I decided to cut the grapes in half and try again. Cutting grapes in half, it turns out, is really annoying, but I figured that would work. And I think it did.
Which way did you
but-
cut them in
and
half,
here comes
though?
the bad news. The end result was really, really gross. Like, I don't understand how they took on the flavors they did. And the grapes themselves were fine. I had some while prepping them, because of course I did. And they were delicious. But out of the freeze dryer, they were not. But rather than dwell on the bad stuff, now let's talk about some of the better things I was able to do with the freeze dryer. The most surprisingly good thing? Onions. Just raw onions. They leave the freeze drying process with the texture of a potato chip, so with just a little bit of salt and oil, they might as well be all natural Funyuns. I tried this only because I once bought these onion chips from Trader Joe's, and the ingredients were just onions, bran oil, and salt. And the bag was a bit cagey about the process used to create them. So I tried freeze-drying an onion, and I'm reasonably sure that was the process. They were very similar to the product from TJ's. I did do a run where I roasted some in the oven for a bit before freeze-drying them, and that didn't seem to make much of a difference as far as the flavor goes. But I suppose one thing I do need to try now is caramelizing a bunch of onions and then freeze-drying them. I also cryo-desiccated various peppers, 2 bell, 1 jalapeno. These ended up with a similar chip-like consistency to the onions, though personally I found them to be less enjoyable. And the jalapeno, maybe I just lucked out and got a particularly spicy one, but that was an intense vegetable chip. And yes, I am a Midwesterner and I look like this. I know that, but normally I like jalapenos on stuff and find them fairly mild, so either freeze drying really accentuates the capsaicin, or I just got quite a banger from the store. Many candies also do interesting
I
things.
actually
in
am
freeze-drying.
curious if that would make any
Turns out
difference to the
Skittles,
capsaicin.
They pop like popcorn. They split in half and the innards puff up, and the end result? It's got a nice crunch. Gummy candies tend to really explode in size. These here were gummy bears.
Oh, no.
These were gummy worms, and these were gummy sharks.
Oh, no.
We'll never speak of that again. These are
I
less fun to
love
eat.
spicy food,
I would
but
describe
not
the
a Ritz.
texture as almost like a candied glass. Dentists would definitely have some thoughts about this. Interestingly though, not all gummies do this. I had some peach rings, which I ran through here, and their texture was altered slightly, but they didn't grow in size. And I also ran some spice drops through the freeze dryer, and they were completely unaffected. What's up with
Your
that?
GERD won't let you?
No idea.
That is
And then, of course,
unfortunate.
there's astronaut ice cream. I don't have to go to the Science Museum gift shop anymore. I can make it at home. That was totally worth buying this thing. Anyway, freeze drying ice cream
I'm not
is
sure I
actually
believe
somewhat
you,
difficult
sir.
to get right. The first time I tried it, I just put in a few store-bought ice cream sandwiches, but I put them in too early. The
Oh,
chamber
no.
wasn't cold enough, and while they didn't look like they were melting at all,
Oh,
and
no.
perhaps they weren't initially, the inside of them liquefied at some point, and it was unpleasant. I tried some of the same sandwiches later, making sure to let the chamber get well below freezing first, and they came out exactly as you would expect. Actually, quite a lot better than the stuff you can buy in a store. And later, I just tried some smatterings of ice cream.
Yes,
that
Star, I
smashed onto
remember.
one of the trays, which I let stay in the freezer for several hours, and it came out fine. Though the cherry filling in this did expand a little bit like the candies.
To this day, I'm
Next
still
question is,
convinced that
do
the
I
only
actually
reason I got
like
sick was
astronaut
because of
ice
how
cream?
much milk I had
And the answer
consumed.
is, not really. I mean, it's kind of fun, but it wears off pretty quickly. So now, let's get back to the whole utilitarian aspect of things.
Like, it wasn't the
A
capsaicin
big
that made
selling
me
point
sick.
of these
It was
very
just I
expensive and
chugged
slow
way too much
machines
milk in way
is
too
that they
short a
can
time
preserve a wide
trying to put the
variety of
fire
food
out.
effectively forever. And that's essentially true. But I want to pick that apart because if you step back and look a little holistically at this situation, I simply cannot
You
find
still have that
owning one of
clipped?
these to
I
be
mean,
rational.
so the funny thing is, it's still not the worst thing because at least I didn't get sick in range of the microphone since I stepped away. Whereas, I wish I had been streaming back then, but I wasn't a streamer at the time. Chonky has gotten sick on a call, and it was hilarious. Because we were sitting and hanging out in a VC, and he went and got a thing of milk and came back, and all that he said was, "This milk smells a little odd," or something along those lines, because he like sniffed it, I guess, before he drank it, but he drank it anyway. So it's just, "Man, this milk smells a little funny." Oh, and you're just like, "Oh no, Chunky!" Dude just started blowing. I was like, I can't believe that. I to this day, that's one of those like, dang, I wish I had been streaming so I could have clipped that, because that was hilarious.
Maybe that sounds blunt, but if this looks like a good idea to you,
It's what came before
our
that made it
mental
20 times
frameworks
funnier.
are
What,
just
me being
completely misaligned
insane?
when it comes to the value of time, money, and effort. And also, at the risk of getting a little deep, you might be worrying a little too much about the apocalypse. Why do I say that? Firstly, just getting and using this thing is a commitment. It was shipped via freight
Full on
on a
unhinged.
pallet, and I bought
I
this
mean,
workbench specifically for it. No, it's not huge, but it's very heavy. There's a reason it's not here on my desk, and you are not going to want this in your kitchen. Remember how way back at the start I said its condensing unit was the same sort of thing you find in small commercial refrigerators? Yeah, well, this thing is loud. The droning
That's a
of the
core
condenser fan
memory
matches
in your
the most
streaming
annoying
now.
vending machine at the bus stop, and it will run the whole time. And then the vacuum pump starts up and it just adds to the racket. The vacuum pump is actually a lot quieter than I expected, so that's good, but it's still more noise and it will not stop for at least 12 hours. You're gonna want this
during
thing
your
in
first
garage or
subathon.
a
I mean,
basement,
yeah, I
and
think
unless
it
you've got one of those
was.
basement
Unless
kitchens,
you'd done one that I
that's
wasn't
gonna be
aware of
annoying
before
when it
that,
comes to
but
the prep required to
I am
actually
fairly
use the
certain it
freeze
was your
dryer.
first, yes.
Nextly, this
Which was
process
hilarious.
is extremely energy intensive. Over a cycle, the machine uses about 16 kilowatt hours. It varies a bit
Well,
depending on what
hello,
exactly you're
Jake.
freeze drying, but it's been
Welcome
pretty
in.
close to 16 every
Doing
month
alright,
I've
my
tested.
friend. How are you?
That's about $2 worth of electricity for every cycle, and that same quantity of energy will power my car for 3 rounds.
Yeah, 16 kilowatt hours. That's
Oh crap! They
These
got a
things are
shotgun.
pretty
They
power
landed on a
intensive.
shotgun.
Looking forward to
Got you,
the
man.
collab on
I got
Wednesday.
you.
Yeah,
Got you.
that's gonna be fun.
Got you, bitch.
They probably. Oh no.
Round trips of my commute. I do have a somewhat short commute.
We're watching this guy talk about freeze dryers and use a freeze dryer. So that's what we're doing right now. We got a few more videos lined up. You know me, they're all going to be relatively
About 20
nerdy.
miles round trip.
I can't
But
help
quite
it.
literally, if I used this thing every day, it would be using 3 times as much energy as my car does, during the summer months anyway, and it would cost about $60 a month.
That's insane.
Yikes. And if you'd like me to make a different comparison, a typical 7 cubic foot chest freezer needs just about 650 watt hours per day, meaning one freeze dry cycle uses as much energy as a freezer does over 25 days. And to really drive this point home, this is the second smallest unit Harvest Right sells, and the larger machines have a NEMA 520 plug on them. That's the one with the sideways blade, which will only fit into outlets like this on a 20 amp circuit.
Oh
These things just need a stupid amount of power to run all those heaters in addition to the compressor.
That's the
and
second
vacuum pump.
smallest.
Oh,
And that's
speaking of the vacuum
$3,000
pump,
as well.
That thing needs maintenance. It has oil in it, and every 20 cycles, the oil needs to be drained and filtered.
Oh
Luckily,
no.
they included an oil filtration system with the freeze dryer. And what is that, you ask? It's a Brita pitcher. It's literally an off-brand Brita pitcher. Honestly, this made me laugh out loud when I saw it. The machine, it will prompt you to do that maintenance when required, and this company does sell an oil-free vacuum pump which does not need this maintenance, but that's a $1,500 upcharge.
Ooh.
Yeah. And what about the time part? In case you haven't noticed, you can't actually freeze dry all that much food at one time. This company's website claims the machine can process 10 to 15 pounds of fresh food per batch, which, to be honest, I don't doubt at all. But you're only going to be able to do 1 batch per day. And while the machine itself is mostly set and forget, the prep work absolutely is not. It's a chore. And since the trays are going to be in the machine for the next 16 to 24 hours, you can't prep the next batch unless you buy a second set of trays. Which I did, because even just playing with this thing for the purposes of this video was tedious enough to make a second set of trays worth having. And by the way, you can't start your next batch for 2 hours because you need to let the machine run its tray heaters to defrost the insides and get rid of all that ice. It's a lot of work. But then, you're not even done when the machine is done. You have to package everything you just freeze-dried if you actually want it to stay preserved. And that's more work and time you're gonna have to spend, plus more money on whatever sort of packaging solution you wanna go with. And of course, the company will happily sell you packaging supplies from Mylar bags to oxygen-absorbing packets. Though to be honest, their pricing is quite reasonable, so I'm not actually mad about that. I'm just saying, if you actually intend to preserve lots of food with one of these, understand what you're signing yourself up for. It's a lot of work and a huge time commitment. And that's before you even consider where you're going to put all this food. I do not have the pantry space for the end result of a year's worth of freeze drying. And to drive the absurdity point home, let's just compare this freeze dryer with a conventional freezer. It's not a perfect comparison, and I know that. For one thing, not all food is suitable for storage in a freezer, and while they can technically store food indefinitely, freezer burn does damage stuff with time. But for the sake
That's
of
true.
argument, let's just say you had $2,800 to spend on food preservation stuff. You could buy this, or, well, remember that basic 7 cubic foot chest freezer I mentioned earlier? Those cost about $200. They're commodity items, and you can get them for about that price from many different retailers, and that size usually has the smallest dollar cost per cubic foot. So let's just say we'll get 10 of those. If you're thinking you're going to be freeze-drying food all year, you definitely have some sort of bunker which can fit 10 chest freezers, so let's not dwell too much on where you're going to put all of them. Plus, you could build some shelves and stack them, probably. Actually, you could definitely just stack a few on top of each other if you know for sure you don't need to get to anything in the bottom ones until 2028. Anyway, congratulations.
So
now you've got 70.
Okay, so hold on. I will say this, because he's not taking something into consideration here, and I get what he's trying to go for. If you're trying to talk a prepper out of these, that is not an effective argument, because yes, you could buy a ton of those freezers. Problem. Preppers are prepping for the end of the world. If the world ends, you're not going to have any power to run those. So you need shelf-stable food, which is what these are. The outcome of freeze-drying the food is shelf-stable. A freezer box is like a chest freezer that's not shelf-stable, because the moment that the power cuts, that stops working and it becomes a box. So, like, I get what he's trying to say. He's ignoring a core
cubic feet
part.
Of frozen food storage. But wait, you say. Freezers need electricity to function. So what if the power goes out?
Yes.
Well, lucky for you, you still have $800 left over to buy yourself a portable generator. You can run to your local Harbor Freight and pick up one of these bad boys, and you'll still have some pocket money left for a gas can, a few gallons of gas, extension cords, and power strips. And it...
Okay, but in a scenario like this, 1, that's only going to last for a little while. 2, if it's in a bunker, you need to now find a way to filter the fumes out. Otherwise, you're just going to, gas chamber yourself. And then 3, if you have one of these, there are other more important things that you could be doing with it. Like I said, I get what he's going for.
Absolutely,
it's not
care of all those
the best
freezers.
argument.
Those things only use about 80 watts when they're running, so as long as they don't all start at the exact same time and overwhelm the generator with their required starting current, you're gonna have plenty of power available for all of them, plus your kitchen fridge and some lights in the TV and whatever else. I have lived through extended power outages off a smaller generator than this, so I do actually know what I'm talking about here. And if I were a gambling man, I think it's a pretty solid bet to assume that anyone actually looking at one of these freeze dryers to use unironically as a means to build up long-term food storage already has a generator. Again, I know the comparison to a freezer is not entirely perfect, but another thing to consider about them is that you just put stuff in them and that's it. You're done. If you're like doing your own butchering and packaging, then sure, there is more than zero prep and packaging cost, but I can all but guarantee you will be spending much, much less time stocking 10 freezers, especially since you don't need to thinly slice everything to make sure it doesn't stick up above the edges of these trays. Now, I don't want to sound too negative. This freeze dryer is truly a fine product, which
are solar generators poor choices?
Were it not for the rather huge fact that the math just isn't math.
I mean, for what? It depends on what are you talking about. Are you talking about a solar generator poor choice for, like, if the world were to end? Blake is also right. It depends on where you're at as well. Some areas, solar power is just not viable because the sun is not out enough to be really valuable. But like I said, it depends on where you're at, and it depends on what you're talking about. Like, what do you want to use it for? Are you talking about just as like a for when power goes out at your house? That's not a terrible thing. There are other options, but it's not a bad option for something like that. If you're talking end of the world scenario, I probably wouldn't go for solar. Solar is very high maintenance and not really great on return.
Thing. If your brain allows you to think it does, by all means, have at it. But if you've watched this video and still think a freeze dryer is something you need in your life, our brains work real different. I think that if somebody were to make a really small freeze dryer, which only cost a few $100, it would be easy for me to say, sure, play around with a freeze dryer. Some foods are fun to freeze dry. But the market right now is basically just variations on this machine, and the pricing is fairly uniform. Which makes sense. This really is lab equipment and not really a kitchen appliance. And honestly, that's really what makes me so uncomfortable about this whole thing. They're being sold now as if they are the next air fryer. And like, no,
Revenant.
you don't need this. It's going to be a massive commitment, and unless you've got a lot of disposable income and time, I truly think this is not a smart purchase. Having said that, the last things I'll touch on before I wrap this video up are the little annoyances with this particular machine and the process more generally. For any freeze dryer, the seal of the vacuum chamber door is very important. It doesn't need to be exactly perfect. Once the vacuum pump kicks on, the atmosphere does a fine job of holding that door in place. But the seal needs to be good enough for the vacuum pump to overcome whatever air might leak past it when it starts up. And on this machine, the door latch and hinge design is not that great for making sure the seal stays flat. It has 3 attachment points, which effectively mean it's a tripod. But should you need to make any adjustment, you'll soon discover that only 2 of them are adjustable. The latch isn't adjustable at all, at least not without bending anything, and it doesn't really form a very tight seal. And while you can adjust the hinges, they have a design which allows the door to move inward somewhat, which makes sense. That's going to happen when the vacuum pump switches on. But it makes adjusting them a nightmare. Out of the box, this thing didn't need any adjustment. But on that first cycle, it was fairly warm out in the warehouse, and I had not pre-frozen anything, so it ran for more than 6 hours just freezing the food I had put inside. In that time, combined with the warm room, ice was beginning to form behind
Gas
the
generators,
rubber
you'd
seal
assume electric
outside of the
ones
vacuum
wouldn't be
chamber,
viable
which
for the
started
end of the world
pushing the seal
situation.
forward
I
and making the
mean,
contact points with the door.
gas generators are also only going to temporarily solve your problem, because you got to remember, gasoline, one, you're not going to be producing any in a situation where the world ends. That's an industrial process that's going to be lost, just solely down to you're not going to have the necessary industry laid down for quite some time to get that spun back up. So, and then you have to pair it with gasoline has a shelf life. It does eventually go bad and will stop being useful. At which point, gas generators will also no longer do you any good. So, long term, that's also a problem. Sadly, there's no, good guaranteed options in a situation like that. Your best bets are going to be, sadly, stuff like solar or wind, unless you are close enough to somewhere where you can access something like coal and you can set up coal burning. Because that, industrial-wise, is not super complex, because it's like, you dig up the coal, you burn the coal produced the energy. Boom, look at that. It still requires that you have coal mining, but that's going to be back long before, you'll have all of the industrial necessities laid down for oil and gas to come back. Blake is 100% right. If you're going into an apocalyptic scenario, you might as well get prepared for the fact that eventually the lights will turn off and won't come back on. Simple as that. Like, there will come a point where it's just going to stop. Like, it's a matter of time, unless it's like, it depends on how bad a world-ending type scenario it is. There are situations wherein the world ends and technically humanity can bounce back and rebuild and eventually end up back to where we are now. But depending on what kind of scenario it is, that might be centuries away, at which point you're just gonna have to accept you're gonna have power for, like, your city power grid will stay up for maybe a week if you're lucky. Depends on where you live. If you live near somewhere that has like a reactor powering the area, you might actually have a good chance of having power for a while until that reactor can no longer keep itself stable and it either shuts off or burns out, whatever it'll do. As long as that thing's active, you'll have power, but eventually even they'll shut down, just because a nuclear reactor is not something where it's ever going to really run out of power necessarily, but more just eventually it will destabilize itself and stop producing that power, because nuclear energy is next to infinite. It's not infinite, but it's close. But it requires that we maintain it. So unless you're talking like, there are discussions of making nuclear reactors that have an AI, and the AI's job would be to maintain it. If that's the case, you might have electricity for literally the whole time unless someone destroyed the facility. Because so long as that AI is active and is balancing the process for the reactor, then technically that reactor will burn forever. I mean, Blake, I get what you're trying to say. It's not actually that bad of an idea. The idea of the concept of AIs that become hostile is pretty unlikely, because at the end of the day, humanity doesn't actually know how, like, when you think AI, you're probably thinking, like, the movie AI. Movie AI and reality AI are not at all the same. They are not actually free thinking. Even the most advanced AIs that currently exist aren't sentient. It's literally just a very, very complex algorithm, essentially. So, well, and you're worried about it failing. I mean, it's less likely to fail than your average Joe is. Like, let's be honest. At the end of the day, an AI for something like, how to word this? Because I want to say for something as simple as a nuclear reactor, which isn't really summing up, like, nuclear energy is not an easy thing. But from a computer program's perspective, it would be versus a human, because to an AI, it's all just numbers. And a nuclear reaction, it's just numbers. If you know the numbers, then you can maintain it. So the only issue that an AI is likely to encounter when it comes to running something like a nuclear reactor basically indefinitely is going to be maintenance. Because eventually the equipment will wear down and shut off or break. And an AI can't do anything about that unless it's a particularly advanced AI that has been provided with, like, robotic equipment, like drones and things that allow it to maintain its own maintenance. That's still quite a ways off. As it currently stands, I think at our current level of technology, it wouldn't be that unreasonable for us to produce a low-level AI that could handle something like maintaining a nuclear reactor's behavior. That wouldn't be that unreasonable. So in a collapse situation, an AI theoretically could run a nuclear reactor for a very long time. Probably not centuries, but several decades at least, until the materials start to fail, you know? That's going to be what would be the failure point. It wouldn't be the AI, it would be the material science that went into building the facility. Because without sufficient technicians around, they wouldn't be able to replace the parts that need to be replaced. That would be its failure point. Long, long, long before the AI would be the failure point. But that always just ends up being the problem whenever you're discussing apocalyptic scenarios. Eventually, everything is going to fail. Like, it's just a matter of time. Because where humanity is at right now is an extremely delicate balancing of centuries of technological development and industrial buildup. And the moment that that industrial buildup is gone, all of the stuff that we've built is going to fall down quite quickly. Some things will fall down way faster than others. Something like a trying to think, what is a good example? Fallout. Fallout has a perfect example. Hoover Dam. Hoover Dam being an important thing makes sense because a dam is a hydroelectric power source, which is actually relatively low tech for what it is. It's basically just turbines that are being spun by water. It's essentially a big early windmill. Because you got to remember, early windmills aren't actually powered by wind, or I guess early mill, which are water powered. You know, the ones that have the wheels on the outside. That's essentially what the Hoover Dam is. It's just a big version of that. And instead of using it to crush grain, like which is what we used mills in the past for, we use it to turn a generator to produce power. That's actually relatively easily maintained, even in a situation where the world falls apart. That we could maintain for quite some time. Because the only issue would be replacing parts. It doesn't take a genius to run it. Now, if it were to fail, we probably wouldn't get it back up for maybe ever. Not in its current state. And its industrial necessities are not super high. Likely what would end up being the problem with that is eventually it's going to fail too. Because the concrete's going to give. The structure itself will bust. That'd likely be the failure point for that one. But all modern energy sources, they all have that issue where you're going to encounter a critical point where it's like, there's nothing you can really do because the industrial buildup's no longer there. And it's going to take a long time to remake an industrial buildup to that level. So if it ever comes to that, default back to the earlier answer of you might as well get used to the idea you're going to eventually not have electricity. Because outside of a handful of very specific scenarios, you're going to be out of power pretty quickly. Like, probably within the first few months, if not within the first year. Like, almost everyone will have no electricity within probably a month. Everyone outside of very specific scenarios are going to have no power within a year. Simple as that. And there's no real way to counter it. So you might as well just get used to the idea. Which is why I get the freeze dryers appeal. It's a tech that has a lot of demand now, but no tech demand in the future. Which makes more sense than what he's arguing.
So I started fiddling with the hinges,
but I get it.
And that's when I discovered how nightmarish this adjustment is. I truthfully don't know what's the bigger issue here. The fact that some ice forms on the outside of the vacuum chamber and deforms the seal, or the weird hinges. I have found that always pre-freezing the trays mostly eliminates the icing problem. If they're at freezer temps when you load them in, the machine only spends about 2 hours before it switches on the vacuum pump. And once it starts the vacuum pump, so long as the seal is good, the hinges and latch don't even matter anymore. But I'm also shoving a piece of cardboard under the latch every time I start it to make sure the seal is tight, and I really don't feel like I should have to do that with such an expensive machine. The other problem is a little more serious. I cannot for the life of me figure out how it determines the cycle is complete. Once it moves to the drying step, the most useless progress bar I have ever encountered shows up on the screen. That bar will move in completely unpredictable ways. Sometimes it only fills up about 1/3 of the way, and then the machine decides, I'm done, and now you're in extra dry time. And other times it seems to fill up pretty normally, but then gets stuck at the end, like a Windows machine. I had presumed that the machine is probably monitoring the vacuum pressure as it turns the heaters on and off. My intuition was that each time the heaters switch on, the vacuum pressure goes up slightly because more water is sublimating, so it's just looking for those little spikes to stop happening, because when all the water's gone, that won't happen anymore. But after several time-lapse sessions with the GoPros, it's clear it's not doing that. But what it is doing ain't any clearer. On this batch, it was barely into the 5th hour of the whole cycle when it suddenly decided, extra dry time, I'm done. And when I saw that, I literally said to it, no, you are not. Luckily, you're able to just bump up the extra dry time, which I did until it got to like 17 hours, because I knew there was no stinking way that batch, which had a lot of watermelon in there, was anywhere near complete. This was also the batch with the tangerines and mandarins, and you could tell just by looking at them that they were still bubbling. And the fact that the vacuum gauge was reading in the 400s when it thought it was done, when on other cycles it was in the 100s when that happened, means I have absolutely no idea what algorithm in there is running. I mean, on this cycle, I was literally just freeze drying 4 trays of ice with 1 tray of Jell-O. And all of the ice had completely disappeared, and yet it still thought it's not done. I just have no idea what it's looking for. However, I must actually give it a little credit there. I ended this session manually because I was sick and tired of waiting for it and I wanted to go home. And when I removed the trays, I ate a few of the Jell-O pieces. Freeze-dried strawberry Jell-O has a crunch and taste which is shockingly similar to the Crunch Berries in Cap'n Crunch cereal.
You have returned.
Sadly,
Welcome
after a
back,
few seconds,
Starberry.
the gelatin flavor comes through and
You missed me
But
being
anyway,
way too
some of
nerdy
those
there for a
Jell-O
bit,
pieces
but
still had a bit of ice in the center. So the machine was actually right. The process was not complete.
do I want to see your boxes?
But
Are you
it
talking
also
like
revealed
your
how inconsistent
your
the
moving
process itself
situation?
is.
Like how much stuff you
All
got
of the
packed
ice
up? If
cubes
not,
had
sure.
completely disappeared.
Why not?
Freeze-dried
I
Jell-O apparently
suppose.
functioned something like aerogel and made an insulating layer which prevented the heaters from actually heating the center of each piece.
You could hear it all.
I chomped
I
on one
see.
right as I took it out, and the center was still ice cold, despite the tray itself being hot. I find this really interesting, but also a little concerning when it comes to the actual safety of the food you freeze dry. In fact, that whole part of this process just gives me the heebie-jeebies. I would make sure to sample everything which I had run through the freeze dryer to make sure it was actually thoroughly dry before I moved on to packaging it for long-term storage. I just can't trust the machine's judgment. The manufacturer clearly wants this to be a one-button set-and-forget experience. The documentation this came with is really light on details, and I would call this a quick start guide, not an owner's manual. And all it says is the machine is measuring the removal and moisture and knows when the process is complete. But I'm pretty sure a
Oh yeah, look at them
just
boxes.
isn't a reasonable expectation.
I hope
for
you've
this
been
sort of
marking
machine.
them so that you
And
know what's
they know
what,
that.
what's where.
They too suggest checking everything to be sure it's dry. And for what it's worth, you are able to put the food back in the machine and resume the process if it's not done. There is a USB input on the side, so presumably the software could be updated.
You're so tired of boxes.
And
Fair enough,
I
man.
will leave open the possibility that something is actually wrong with this particular unit. But I have a theory as to what's going on, and I think it's an unsolvable problem. Both the manual and demonstrations of this product on their website imply that mixing products in here is fine to do, but I'm a little skeptical of that. I have not removed the rack structure because it would involve messing with the seal, which I really don't want to do, so I can't say this with certainty, but I believe these two rivets here are holding the temperature sensor for the tray rack. And that means it's influenced by what is on those trays and which order you loaded them in. If you put trays with more stuff and or more wet stuff on them farther from that sensor, it may think it's done early because a lighter, drier tray was closer to it. I definitely know from all my testing that if the overall mass of the food on each tray varies a lot from tray to tray, the machine is more likely to be confused. It may end too early or it may go on a lot longer than it needs to. And what's most interesting about that, to me, is that this isn't explained at all in the machine's owner's manual. But truly, I don't want to sound too hard on this product or this company. I actually quite like it, and so long as you're aware of the fact that it might
Pang,
end the cycle
thank
too
you for
early
the
and be on
bit,
the lookout
my
for that,
friend. Welcome in.
it's truly a fine machine. And while it was hideously expensive,
Half the
for
box is
what it
full
is,
onto the small,
I think the price
not
is
but
actually
closed. You pack them all.
What I
order
don't
for the
think
next
is
11
reasonable,
days.
though,
Only have
at least in my
big
opinion,
box full of
is
clothes.
ordinary people
Okay.
having one of these in their home. It's either a very expensive toy, which you'll probably get sick of using before too long, or if you seriously think this is worth having for nearly indefinite food storage, understand the many commitments you will be making before you pull the trigger.
He has
I'll wrap
so
up
much
now,
clothing.
but let me reiterate the commitment thing.
That's
You are
unusual.
signing
I
up
won't
for
I won't
hours and
lie.
hours of tedious.
But fair enough, I suppose. Another great video from this individual, though. I love this guy's stuff. It's great.
Each year, Burning Man, the famed and occasionally notorious week-long
What, the man
festival,
having more
cannot
clothing than the
operate
woman? Yes,
unless
that
it
is
fits a
unusual.
signature on this short document. After all, the festival occurs here, on the playa of the Black Rock Desert, on land not owned by Burning Man itself, but the United States. It's public land, managed by an agency called the Bureau of Land Management, so in order for the massive 80,000 person festival to occur, this permit needs the signature of the manager of the BLM's Black Rock field office. Getting that signature can be a tenuous process. The Black Rock Desert is encompassed in a national conservation area, so the BLM requires that the festival disappear without a trace. 80,000 people must come and especially go without leaving an impact, or at least the BLM's definition of an impact. Each year, Burning Man must clean the playa to the point that on any given acre of land, there is no more than 1 square foot of remaining trash. To assure this, the agency randomly selects 120 out of the event's 3,883 acres, then actually goes out to them, picks up any remaining trash, takes it back to their field office, lays it out on a green background, takes a photo, then uses Photoshop to layer out the green background and measure the square footage of the trash. In this photo, for example, it added up to 0.264, meaning the acre of land that this trash was pulled from passed the test. But in 2023, after an irregularly rainy year that led to a muddy mess of a festival, Burning Man barely passed their inspection. 11 of the 120 points failed. They're allowed to fail 12. Had they passed that threshold, their permit for 2024 very well might not have been granted. But far more notable than the festival's near miss is the scale of the agency tasked with regulating this temporary, world-famous 80,000 person city. The Black Rock Desert is part of the BLM's Winnemucca district, headquartered here in this single-story office building in Winnemucca, Nevada. The district then has this ancillary facility in Gerlach, Nevada, far closer to the Black Rock Desert, but that's it. That's the entire physical presence of the district of the agency tasked not only with overseeing Burning Man, but 8.2
The same
million
moving day,
acres
you
of
two.
land,
That
more
is.
than the entirety of Qatar,
Huh.
and a collection that adds up to 75% of the entire landmass within the Winnemucca district. How such a small and obscure government agency ended up with this colossal task is remarkably straightforward to explain. When the United States conquered and settled the West, all the land was originally owned by the federal government, at least according to the federal government. This land was then allocated out to different owners and users. For example, this tranche of Nevada near the Black Rock Desert was earmarked as the best route for the first transcontinental railroad due to its comparatively tame geography, so the federal government incentivized the Central Pacific Railroad Company to actually build the rails by giving it every other square mile of land in
What
the basin
club you're
of the
in
track.
now?
The thought was that they'd eventually be able to sell much of that land, which would become
Star,
more
I'm
valuable
a
with the
little bit
construction of
worried.
railroads.
What
So today, more than a century
what
on,
club are
these
you
tracts were
in
held by
now?
various private landowners. Private land ownership was also established here in the town of Fallon. This area started as a ranch owned by Mike and Eliza Fallon. They likely claimed the land through the rights established by the Homestead Acts, which effectively allowed settlers to get up to 160 acres of land in these western states for a nominal fee as long as they cultivated and lived on it for 6 months. Eventually, Mike and Eliza Fallon
Now
were
part of the
awarded an
Glasses
upcoming
Club?
project by the
Welcome.
newly formed Bureau of Reclamation to build the irrigation infrastructure to allow for farming in this dry desert region, and they therefore sold their ranch to a land developer who leveraged the speculation to split it into
So you can
smaller
finally
chunks and sell to
see.
new rivals, thereby forming the town of Fallon. That Bureau of Reclamation project did eventually happen, and as part of it, the agency was given ownership of this land around the farmland, rivers, and relevant pieces of infrastructure. Although simultaneously, the very waterways that the Bureau of Reclamation were manipulating were identified as crucial habitats for migratory birds, so the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was given these two portions of land to turn into the Fallon and Stillwater National Wildlife Refuges, assuring that they'd remain undisturbed for the wildlife. With World War II, the Fallon Naval Air Station was built, so this land was handed over to the Department of Defense, and it also got these tracts to turn into the Fallon Range Training Complex. Essentially, empty areas of the desert where pilots can train using actual live weapons. Then finally, this area near town was transferred to the Bureau of Indian Affairs to be held in trust on behalf of the Fallon Paiute Shoshone Reservation, and that was the extent of land allocation. But all of this was still left. So that's to say, if land wasn't valuable enough for settlers to want it, if it wasn't important enough as habitat for the Fish and Wildlife Service to want it, if it wasn't notable enough for the National Park Service to want it, if the DoD, nor the Bureau of Rec, nor the Forest Service, nor the Bureau of Indian Affairs wanted it, that's when the Bureau of Land Management got land. The BLM manages what's left. This land has therefore been judged through the process of land allocation as America's worst land. That of least utility to both humans and animals. But even if it is America's most useless land, that doesn't mean it's useless.
Our
As the
most
American
useless
West has
land.
developed and
Good to
grown in
know.
population, humans and animals have found plenty of use for the land the BLM manages. But simultaneously, BLM land is the least regulated public land in America. If you want to camp on it, you can, for free, effectively anywhere, for up to 14 days. If you want to collect rocks and fossils and take them home, you can, for free, as long as you're not selling them. If you want to let your cattle out to graze or build an electric transmission line or a coal mine or an oil rig on BLM land, you probably can, after some permitting. And if you want to set up a temporary city of 80,000 on a conserved ancient lake bed in the middle of nowhere, well, you can do that too. But because Burning Man takes two diametrically opposed land use concepts, conserved nature and bustling city, and merges them year in, year out, there's a lot of hoops to jump through. Not long after the trash samples are taken, the process of organizing the next year's Burning Man begins anew with the post-event cooperators meeting. The title's apt. While it's the BLM's land and therefore the BLM's rules, building a city then disappearing it is a monumental lift that's overseen by the Federal Bureau with the assistance of county officials, but undertaken almost exclusively by the Burning Man Project, the festival's official operator, and its army of volunteers and staff. Out of this cooperators meeting between land managers and land users comes a document like this, the Additional Stipulations List, a list of new rules that are layered on top of what's established in this, the 2930-2 Special Recreation Permit. And of course, this permit, in turn, is informed by the findings of this Environmental Impact Statement initiated in 2017 and completed in 2019 by the BLM that runs hundreds of pages and multiple volumes. Taken together, just getting the paperwork in order for this is a bear. Then there's upholding the rules outlined in the paperwork, and for this, the BLM calls for backup. As a federal land management
Yes,
agency,
the real
does have
BLM.
a policing arm, the BLM Law Enforcement Rangers, but there's only 200 of them nationwide, and only 2 in this particular.
This is the only BLM that I have much in the way of respect for, as this one doesn't riot.
They go national.
Typically, I think.
From Wyoming, California,
Not aware of the
Colorado,
Bureau of Land
many
Management
them
ever
become
leading any
annual
kind of
fixtures
riots or
of the
anything.
event. Still, that's not quite enough, so the BLM also partners with Nevada Highway Patrol and the Pershing County Sheriff's Office to dole out citations, tickets, and make the occasional arrest. But the multifaceted Bureau does more than just police. Each year, for instance, among the thousands of extravagant setups, there's this humble tent called the Interp Camp, where employed specialists can monitor air quality, and public-facing recreation and visitor service staff set up tables and posters to inform the public on the geological and cultural history of the landscape upon which they're standing. At the end of the festival, the BLM again appears in another capacity, as now it's BLM officials training and overseeing volunteers on how to properly take trash samples. While heavily cooperative, from paperwork to litter picking and law enforcement, the BLM is there every step of the way. While intuitive, as it is the land they maintain, it's a monumental undertaking for a regional office that as recently as 2022 only had 5 specialist employees. But the BLM doesn't have much of a choice in the matter to begin with. While the nearly $3 million in annual fees for the event covers the cost, the BLM allows this use for a more fundamental reason. Because it has to. See, all of this Black Rock Desert land became conservation land in 2000 with this legislation. But the rules on access and use, well, they're a little light on detail. Essentially, it can be used if it's not damaged too much for future use, and it can host large permitted events as long as it doesn't offend the Management Plan or the Management Act of 1976. But this Management Act, which has come to guide how the BLM operates today, is also largely up to interpretation, as it declares that public land is to be managed on for the basis of multiple use and sustained yield. The land is to be protected for future generations, while it is also to be used for the public's benefit in the present. It's rather vague, it's rather contradictory, and it's made room for cities on conservation land and a whole host of other odd outgrowths. And when you combine that vague mandate with a Congress and executive branch that needs someone to follow through on their acts and orders, the BLM ends up with a dizzying array of often contradictory tasks. For example, in 1971, Congress addressed long-running concerns by a subset of animal welfare advocates and passed the Wild and Free-Roaming Horse and Burros Act. The name is a bit of a misnomer, as horses and burros are both domesticated animals, meaning they can't truly be wild, but through the years, plenty of horses and burros had escaped or been freed and now roamed across the West, multiplying in population at a pest-like rate. Ranchers hated this, as the horses were ferocious grazers that quickly depleted the land that would otherwise sustain their cattle, but the act declared them, quote, living symbols of the historic and pioneer spirit of the West, and therefore the BLM was tasked with protecting, often from ranchers. To do so, they established 270 herd management areas where a tranche of federal land is managed specifically for the benefit of these horses and burros. In addition, they determined that the sustainable nationwide population of wild horses and burros was 26,690, so the BLM is tasked with keeping the population as close to this as possible, which is near impossible with the tools at the Bureau's disposal, evidenced by the fact that the current population is over 80,000. They're not allowed to kill
Good
horses, so when a given herd is overpopulated, they use a helicopter to corral them into a trap. From there, some horses receive birth control to limit population growth, while others are taken to off-range pastures. Many of these off-range pastures are near prisons that have programs where inmates train the horses so that they can eventually be adopted and live the rest of their lives as a non-wild horse. But that's just the start of a near endless list of BLM tasks. For example,
I'll be honest that the idea of like, oh yeah, we're no, that's not the button I wanted to hit. The idea of the fact that we are essentially just like, yeah, let them be a problem because they represent the Wild West. I'm gonna be real honest, whoever signed off on that, you're an idiot. You should feel bad, and I would bully you if we had gone to the same school. Because you're really dumb. That's a really, really idiotic reasoning to be like, yeah, let's let an ongoing problem continue ongoing because some some middle-class white women stood around with signs about like, oh, the horses and the donkeys should be allowed to run around and cause biological problems in the area. You're dumb. You should have been made fun of more.
Government formed the California Coastal National Monument.
That's a really
which
stupid
primarily protects
idea
not the
and a
land
really
on the
stupid
coast,
reasoning
but the
for
islets,
passing
reefs,
that.
and rock outcroppings just off the coast, and it's the BLM's job to run that national monument. The BLM is also supposed to make about 50,000 old mines safe. Mines were poorly documented and quickly abandoned during the gold rush era, leaving them
Gonna head out? All right, Remnant.
The standards of the mines that closed today.
You have a
The
wonderful
risks
rest of your
are
day.
myriad.
God bless you, my
One
friend.
can
Thank
fall
you
into
for
a mine shaft,
popping
get
in.
crushed in a cave-in, accidentally detonate an old explosive, breathe in deadly gases, suffocate from a lack of
Starberry,
oxygen,
you are
be
dumb
lost
and should
storm,
feel
or just
bad.
walk across
Exactly.
unstable land above that caves in. And these aren't theoretical threats, as dozens of people die due to them each year. So the BLM is tasked with preventing that, as much as possible, by fixing up these old mines. Congress also told the BLM to figure out a bunch of good routes for electric lines and pipelines. They did. This was the answer. The BLM's also not super sure exactly where all its own land is, especially in Alaska, so Congress told them to figure it out, so they go around and survey land pretty regularly. BLM land also catches on fire a lot, so the agency runs its own 3,000-person fire department, including an aviation division owning and operating almost 800 aircraft.
Their land also
But
lights
beyond
on
the
fire a
endless
lot.
array of tiny
Oh.
and crucial programs, the core task of the BLM really is managing whatever people want to do with their land. If people want to recreate on BLM land, the BLM needs to figure out how to do it in a generally sustainable way. For example, a lot of people believe that this spot is where the famed Roswell UFO crash happened, and happens to be on BLM land, so the BLM had to construct a parking area and trail to mitigate potential damage by an influx of visitors.
The land likes arson, okay?
Users
Yeah,
find a
fair
way to
enough,
have
fair
fun
enough.
on
I don't
BLM
blame it.
land, and the BLM rolls out regulations and develops sites with the infrastructure needed to make that recreation sustainable. If others want to use BLM land to mine coal, for example, the BLM also has to manage and regulate that. In fact, the BLM manages almost the entirety of the federal government's mineral rights, which are enormous. You see, not only is the BLM responsible for oil and gas leasing on all federal land, meaning they even handle leasing on Forest Service land, for example, but the agency also handles so-called split estates. When the federal government allocated land in the West, much of it was under the stipulation that the federal government would still own the subsurface mineral rights, so that means almost 30% of the US's landmass is administered by the BLM for the purposes of subsurface minerals. Of course, this puts the BLM in the center of a near endless controversy over oil, gas, and mine leasing on federal land. But the BLM is used to controversy, as from the very beginning, it's been tasked with solving the tragedy of the commons. Quite literally. Many of the first Americans to settle the West were ranchers, raising cattle, sheep, and other livestock through open grazing, as in animals being let loose on unused federal land and allowed to eat whatever wild plants they want. This was entirely allowed, but eventually, as more and more ranchers moved into the West, land got overgrazed, and cattle populations collapsed as there was not enough forage to sustain them. So in the 1930s, Congress passed the Taylor Grazing Act that started to regulate ranching on federal land through the establishment of the Grazing Service, which eventually merged with the General Land Office to become the Bureau of Land Management. These days, the BLM administers 18,000 permits for livestock grazing. These are granted to ranchers with a valid so-called base property near BLM land, and as a condition of their permit, ranchers must pay a fee of $1.35 per animal unit month, which basically means they pay $1.35 per month for the amount of forage it takes to sustain one horse. This is lower than the grazing fee was all the way back in 1981, even ignoring inflation. Back then, it was $2.31. It's also well below the free market price for grazing, estimated at around $23 on private land. That means the permits for BLM grazing are incredibly valuable. Much like water rights, property in the West will sell at hugely inflated prices if it includes grazing rights, and any threat to the ability to graze on federal land is therefore treated as existential. This assumed existential threat reached fever pitch in 2016 when a group of radical right-wing ranchers stormed and occupied the headquarters of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife's Malheur National Wildlife Refuge for 40 days, a standoff which resulted in a death and ultimately 27 federal indictments. And it was all at the result of a dispute some century in the making. All this, the Malheur Refuge, has been a federally protected bird sanctuary since 1908, when this slice of land, between the refuge and BLM land, has been the Hammond Homestead Ranch since the 1870s. For a while, these parties coexisted relatively peacefully, in part because no one really made a fuss if Hammond cattle made their way onto refuge land to graze. But that changed in 1994 when Fish and Wildlife managers wanted to build a fence to better protect the riparian ecosystem that for so long had been overgrazed. Suddenly, what one party saw as a privilege and the other saw as a right was being taken away from the Hammonds. Seen as a direct affront to his way of life and trampling of his rights, the ranch's patriarch Dwight Hammond escalated the dispute by issuing death threats towards the federal employees. Then he and his son physically held up fence construction by parking heavy machinery in the fence's path and refusing to back down.
Thinking of
The
sub
two were
goals is
arrested,
hard.
but Dwight
Yeah.
and his son had sparked a larger movement. Now their neighbors and allies in Burns, Oregon posted signs in businesses that they wouldn't serve federal agents, while their district representative protested the arrest of the Department of the Interior and President Clinton. To this group, their use of the overlooked, oft-forgotten, ever so lightly policed grazing land of the West was functionally theirs, and now feds were trying to take it away. After their release, the Hammonds didn't back down. In '99, they set a fire to burn off refuse that then spilled onto BLM land, incurring fees and federal ire. They did it again in 2001, allegedly to conceal proof of illegal deer hunting. Then, to protect their own property during a larger wildfire in 2006, they started their own backburns to limit the oncoming fire's fuel, which nearly trapped BLM firefighters between two blazes. These moves led to charges of arson, and after a lengthy legal battle, the story began to spread across the rest of the ranching West, where it reached one Ammon Bundy in Arizona, who set in motion the takeover of the refuge. To any BLM official, the name was notable, as the Bundy family too has a long history of high-profile disagreements with federal managers. Cliven, Ammon's father, refused to sell his grazing permits back to the federal government in 1993 as part of a larger land swap deal
As
to
is
protect
his
a
right.
newly designated endangered species, the desert tortoise in southern Nevada. In a further act of defiance, he decided to no longer renew his grazing fees, eventually racking up more than $1 million worth of unpaid fees. When the BLM finally moved to capture and impound all the trespassing cattle, a standoff commenced with armed militia members squaring off against over 100 federal officials, including 24 BLM enforcement officers, before the BLM ultimately relented and returned the cattle in an act of de-escalation. Of course, such standoffs are exceedingly rare, but heated, intense disagreements over exactly what should be happening on BLM
Well, hello,
land is
Rebozo.
but fringe, anti-federal,
Doing well.
militarized ranchers are only one party that feels aggrieved by federal land managers. Entire states take issue when the federal government alters policy and designation, as Utah did when the Clinton administration designated the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, which stymied the state's development of lands and roads in the region. A coalition of ranchers, recreators, and environmentalists boisterously lobbied against oil and gas development along western Colorado's Thompson Divide until the BLM and Forest Service finally relented. In 2020, when the Trump administration moved BLM headquarters from DC to practically the opposite of DC in Grand Junction, Colorado, certain land users, primarily wary ranchers and opportunistic oil and gas developers, celebrated, while environmentalists and recreators complained. At every turn, the BLM, tasked with pleasing so many, inevitably disappoints, turning one of the sleepiest and most obscure federal agencies into one of the nation's most controversial. The issue seems to be that the BLM doesn't have a thing. DoD land, for example, is very clearly for the use of the military. This is undoubtedly controversial, especially in places like Hawaii, where it takes up such a huge chunk of the landmass, but it's not like the public has any realistic shot of getting in the way of whatever the US military wants to do. National Park Service land,
Fair.
on the other hand, is very clearly for the dual purposes of conservation and recreation. Many of it serves as national parks themselves. It's no surprise that the agency that manages globally known destinations like Yellowstone and Yosemite is popular and well supported by the public. In fact, in a Pew Research poll about public sentiment regarding 16 of the best-known federal agencies, the NPS was the most popular. 76% had a favorable view of it, only 7% a negative one.
Well, yeah.
The lesser-known Fish and Wildlife Service seems to steer clear of controversy because its mandate is very clearly one of conservation for the sake of animals, not humans. It's not completely loved. In fact, right now it's reached headlines due to its dispute with Elon Musk's SpaceX, whose starbase sits adjacent to their conservation land. But wildlife conservation is broadly popular, and therefore, so is the agency. The Forest Service mandate is perhaps closest to the BLM's, as it's tasked with simultaneous management of resource exploitation, recreation management, and conservation. But forestry, which is the core of Forest Service resource use, can be much more compatible with conservation goals. It also helps that its land is conspicuously used for America's most popular ski resorts, and it's the agency behind Smokey Bear. The Forest Service has entered public consciousness as something to be revered and supported. The BLM, meanwhile, is unloved. Ranchers complain it's not protecting their rights enough, recreators complain it's favoring ranching and resource use, oil and gas complain it's straying from its original intention and morphing into a conservation and recreation-focused agency. The problem really is that the BLM is supposed to please everyone, and the only way to do that with land, where uses are mutually exclusive, is to disappoint everyone.
Yeah.
The BLM has no real coalition behind it. It's them versus everyone, so they're under-resourced and underappreciated. America's worst land is great for what it's not.
Too little resources, way too wide of an objective.
The agency tasked with managing that emptiness.
Anytime you do something like that, that is always going to result in a failure.
I'm really glad you made it to the end of this video, because this topic is one that matters a lot to me, and I think it goes under-discussed. I, after all, live in Colorado, in an area with a ton of BLM land, and rarely a day goes by that I don't end up on some of it. The Intermountain West is a pretty unique region. There really are not a lot of equivalents to it in the English-speaking world, so it does have a fairly distinct set of challenges. As the least populated area of America, I think a lot of these challenges go underreported in national media, so I find it particularly interesting and important to make videos about these issues. And one issue in particular was so significant that I thought it merited more than the video. 40 million people in this region rely almost exclusively on the water that one river, the Colorado River, provides. Las Vegas, Phoenix, many of the fastest growing areas in America simply could not exist without it, yet people have been legally guaranteed more water through water rights than the river actually carries downstream in an average year. So over much of the past 20 years, the massive reservoirs sitting behind the Hoover and Glen Canyon dams have been getting lower and lower and lower.
That's not good.
It's an existential situation for this entire region, so I thought it merited a whole documentary about it, which myself and my team made with funding provided by Nebula. And this doc, The Colorado Problem, is just a tiny bit of the top-notch original content on Nebula. In fact, earlier this year, we filmed in the same region again for The Getaway, a competition show that we told the contestants was a simple elimination style thing where they had to root out the saboteur among them. But in actuality, we told all of them they were the saboteur, which, as you can imagine, led to chaos. There's also Modern Conflicts by Real Life Lore, covering the most consequential conflicts of recent times in intricate detail. WTF USA by TLDR News, covering the current US election week by week, and more coming out all the time. Nebula was founded.
This is behind the counter at a Japanese-style Chinese restaurant.
A Japanese-style Chinese restaurant. It's a weird concept to me. Or at least verbally. It's an odd
So
thing.
This morning we're all the way in Tokyo's
But I saw it and was like, well,
we are
gotta watch
going
that.
back 5
I'm curious now.
generations At this father and son Chinese restaurant. I'm so excited to take you guys behind the counter for this one, so let's just get this one started. Asahi is a Japanese-style Chinese restaurant with a rich history spanning over 100 years. Originally from the Nihonbashi area, the shop tragically burnt down during the war, but was later rebuilt here in one of
I presume
Asahi's
it's
hidden
kind of
gems,
similar to how there's
serving by
American-style
iconic
Chinese
people.
restaurants,
And
you
now
know?
this hidden gem is run by a father and son duo serving lines of locals each and every day. Good morning. He's the owner, Ueki-san, and usually the first one to come in. It's so hot today, isn't it? Apparently, he took over the shop from his father when he was 29 years old, making him the 4th generation owner in his family. But he actually started his career at the age of 16, studying under his grandfather's friend at a traditional Japanese cuisine restaurant in Shimane Prefecture, after which he worked in other industries to gain more life experience before settling back down here. The first thing he does in the morning is to take care of the desalinated menma, bamboo shoots used in their ramen. So how old is this restaurant again?
120年ぐらい。僕4代目。
Good lord.
Way back.
うちの息子が今度5代目。
120-year-old and being on the fourth, going on to fifth generation of a restaurant.
So you live here?
そう、ここ実家です。
You must know everyone then.
もちろんもちろん、このおじいちゃんとかおばあちゃん、それから親父おふくろ、みんなこの辺ですから、僕はここだからお祭りもあるしね。
Oh, when's the
5
festival?
月もう終わっちゃいました。三社祭りって大きいのがあるんだよ。
Ah, that's a famous one.
はい、おはようございます。
Good morning. Oh, the chicken delivery is here. Hello.
かっちゃん。
They're so close. Having a generational business like this, the family's developed many strong relationships with vendors going as far back as his great-grandfather. Another
I just love that that guy showed up and was like, is this for YouTube or something?
Oh, really?
His immediate first assumption.
Your noodles.
木材を一切使ってないんで、それが売りでやらせていただいてるんで、前日にご注文いただいたやつを当日で製造してやらせていただいてます。
Damn, those are some fresh
どうも
nudes.
ありがとうございます。すいません。
Thank you. By the way, do you ever take vacations?
夏休みはね、8月にもう一回やりますね。
Oh, what do you usually do?
温泉草津に行きますね。
Oh, yeah?
草津大好きなんだよね。お酒飲みながら。
Nice. What's your poison?
ハイボールばっかしだな、今。
No beer?
ビールも大好き、もちろん。スタートビールね。
How much can you drink?
1本。
Holy highballs.
うちみんな
In
ね
Japan, there's a
Oh, wow.
hotel.
So do you travel with your wife?
Their stay is free, including minibar, and all you have to do is agree to being live streamed to YouTube.
月曜日お休みできる人ってなかなかいないんだよ
That's...
Hey, I could take the weekend
I'm not sure
off.
I'd sign off on that. I feel like there's gotta be some kind of a
Oh,
catch.
he's already taking a break.
'Cause there's no way they're making enough money off of live streaming it to make- to, like, cover their costs.
Wow, he drinks
Not
3 cups
without
of
there being
coffee.
some kind of catch to
By
it.
the way, how old are you?
もう57歳。
Damn, you look way younger.
そうそう、若いって言われるけど、ちゃんと57年生きてます。適当にだけど。
During this downtime, he works on the shop's accounting and other desk-related tasks, as it's also his responsibility as the business owner to keep all the paperwork in order. More deliveries. Does it come every day?
そう、毎朝。
Okay, I'm gonna step away for one moment. I'll be right back, chat, but I'm gonna leave the video running, so give me just a second.
Now that the pork bones and pork feet have been delivered, he adds them to the chicken-based soup, which will ultimately be used for the shop's signature ramen dishes. After boiling for a while, he blends the original batch with today's, which is a cooking method in Japan known as sugikashi. It's supposed to deepen the soup's flavor and why it's commonly practiced among many ramen shops. Now he quickly cleans the workplace to ensure the utmost cleanliness, despite his son thoroughly cleaning the kitchen the night before. So why the name Asahi?
名前ね、なんで朝日なのっつっておじいちゃんに聞いたんだけど、戦争中だからだろうっつって。
What do you mean?
朝日ってほら、登る一方じゃない。商売的にね、どんどん登ってったんだよ。沈まない。でもまあそれで納得だよね。
Ah, yeah, that makes sense. And wow, the pork looks so fresh. The shop uses 5 kilograms of pork a day to make their special chashu, sourcing it from their trusted wholesaler who provides them with only fresh domestic cuts, which are never frozen. Do you know why your great-grandparents chose Chinese food for their business?
まあ売れると思ってやったんじゃない。当時はまだね、第二次世界大戦の前だから。今はね、東京はさ、世界中の料理が食べられるけど、その当時は中華料理が珍しかった。
I see. So what's the difference between Chinese food in Japan and China?
ね、まずね、調味料の味。日本のお醤油はね、まあしょっぱいじゃない。中国のお醤油はね、甘いんだな。今お米の質ね、日本の米はほら、粘り気があって、まあ、チャーハン作ってもパラパラしない。
Ah,
それ
okay.
からジャンだな。あんなにジャン使わないもん。
He says that Japanese-style Chinese is more casual and has less menu items compared to authentic Chinese food. Japanese-style Chinese restaurants like Asahi are known in Japan as machi chuka, directly translated town in Chinese. Its origins trace back to the 1600s when it arrived in Japan's Nagasaki area during the Edo period, but through time underwent a gradual evolution to suit Japanese tastes, and even developing original dishes like chukadon and shrimp mayonnaise, one of my favorites. Now he removes the pork used for their chashu, but leaves the chicken bones in the soup stock throughout the day, which creates a progressively rich flavor as the day goes on. Regulars are aware of this and enjoy visiting at specific times depending on their preferred taste for that day. Oh, his son is here. Good morning. Nice to meet you. How long have you been working here?
5年ぐらいかな。
Oh, what did you do before this?
内装だな。
Nice. Surprisingly, Ueki-san was contemplating closing down the business when he retired, but his son told him that he wanted to carry on his family's tradition, which secretly made him smile. After all, the shop is where he grew up and it's been a part of his life since he was born. Not only that, the neighbors and his friends who have regularly visited throughout his lifetime makes this place truly the home he's only ever known. And now he even feels more grateful that the tradition and flavors his ancestors built will continue on for another generation. What are you singing?
できた思いついた曲を Life is Music.
Haha, sweet. That pan seems too small.
さあさあこれがいい。はいどうも。
Hi, nice to meet you.
お願いします。
Have you worked here for a while?
いや、10月で1年目です。
Cool, how'd you find this job?
もともとここで働いてる友達の紹介と人が足りないって聞いたんで、
And what do you do when you're off?
友達と飲みに行ったりとかわかんない。
The owner loves drinking too, right?
そうですね。大好きです。
So who can drink more?
リュウさんの方が全然来る。
So how's it working here?
楽しいです。でも浅草いろんな人が来るんで、ラーメン食べ放題なんで。
Damn, that would be trouble for me. So this shop is located more specifically in the Ura Asakusa neighborhood, one of Tokyo's old school geisha districts dating back to the Edo period. Although these days it's more rare to see a geisha, but back then many of their customers would stop by here for a late night ramen. Hey, so before we continue on, I want to tell you guys about the awesome people at Booksuit who also sponsored this video. I know that many of you have already subscribed, which is awesome, but for those of you who don't know, they provide a premium experience of Japanese snacks, candies, and tea pairings delivered to your front door. They work with family businesses all over Japan and deliver a new theme of authentic treats each and every month. First time users will get a Seasons of Japan box, and after that, you'll get a theme box like this one. This month's theme is Luminous Tokyo with its electrifying atmosphere and bustling streets. So this box is curated with the city's dazzling snacks. My favorite this month is a Tokyo chocolate waffle sandwich cookie.
All
which you
right,
can
I'm
try for
back.
yourself. So get $15 off your own authentic Japanese subscription snack box from Booksuit by using my code PALO and link in the description.
There's one more video I queued up after this. It's a bit longer, but after that,
Style noodles.
I'm curious what you all would be interested in. Should we go play something after the next video, or
Oh, you're gonna let me taste it?
watch another video, or rap stream?
It's his routine to taste today's soup and compare it with yesterday's, making sure that today's soup tastes exactly the same. As an owner of a restaurant that's been successful for over a century now, he believes it's critical to stay true to the original
Play
recipe
something?
and taste created by his ancestors. Also mentioning that even the same recipe.
What should we
tastes
play
different,
then,
so he
is the
takes
question.
extra care to maintain
And
the
are you
shop's
joining
signature
us,
flavors.
Star?
Wow, there's already people waiting. At 11:30, the restaurant is finally in business.
Well, I'm always open to having you join, my friend, if we play something that we both have. Did you have something in mind?
San is responsible for stir frying, while Ueki-san takes care of the noodles and cutting. And the server adds a garnish and sides, then carries the dishes to the table.
It all looks so tasty. That's the problem. Anytime I watch these videos, I'm so enamored with them. I love these kind of videos, but they always make me so hungry, bro.
Welcoming atmosphere, friendly owners, and swift service,
Oh.
all at a reasonable price. To sum it up, an everyday food and an everyday type of place. And a Wiki-san shop is no exception.
I'm not gonna lie. Part of me wants to go to Japan sometime in the near-ish future. Star, you can always go to your game library and sort it, and there's options to sort them by games that have multiplayer that I also have.
And that's their top seller.
That's how I check. I just go in and I sort and see what games that I have in common with someone.
It's one of their many new items.
That's multiplayer, of course.
Initially, he focused on faith.
I mean, we got Played Up. I know we haven't played Played Up in a while, and I'm sure if Rebozo is around, he'd be down to join us if he's got the time.
Outside of traditionally known machi chuka dishes, serving both typical dishes and ones he created himself. He also says that over time, he realized that it's important to loosen up a little bit in order to continue on his family's legacy. Excuse me, can I bother you? So do you come here often? For a long time now? Like how long? Since you were a baby? Wow. So what's your recommendation then?
おすすめはね、夏って冷やし中華。でもこれ普通のところは夏しかやってないんだけど、このお店は一年中やってるから。もう全然ね、他の冷やし中華とか味が違う。ここでしかできる、食べられない。
What about the winter?
冬のおすすめは最近は生姜そばとラーメンも美味しいですよ。
Thanks. Excuse me, do you come here often?
そう隣なんだけどなかなかこのお店忙しいからさ、はい、なかなか来れないね。
Oh, okay. What's your recommendation?
何があって何でも美味しいんだろうけど好みがいろいろあってやっぱりこの時期はね冷たいそば食べちゃうよね。
Cool. How long have you been coming here?
60年。
Jeez, really?
だから今の大将のお父さん、おじいちゃんみたいから。お父さんは遊び仲間でさ、よく野球やったり遊んで。
Well, thank you. That's truly amazing, and who knows, imagine 20 years from now, in this very same seat, one of Oeki-san's friends will be saying the same thing about him, while his son and maybe grandson are working together in the kitchen, continuing on the legacy. So that's another one in the books. If you want to visit this place yourself, I'll be sure to leave a link in the description. Okay, so we're gonna end it here. That is behind the counter at a Japanese-style Chinese restaurant.
Haven't played Phasmo in forever. Yeah, that's just an in general thing for me though at this point. Like I've enjoyed Phasmo a fair bit, but I'll be honest, it just hasn't really like tempted me all that much lately. I don't know what the correct wording would be. It just, I don't know. I haven't felt that urge.
I'm on location outside San Antonio, Texas, where a construction crew is getting started unloading equipment to begin work on a new sewage lift station. This area may look rural now, but it's one of the fastest developing parts of Texas. New homes and new businesses require new utilities, including sewers, to keep up with demand. And in this particular location, those new sewers need a new pumping station to get the wastewater where it needs to go.
I also just now noticed that this says an hour and a half. I'll be real honest. I clicked on this video earlier and I didn't notice that number. If I had, I probably wouldn't have clicked on it. I like these videos. I don't like them enough to watch an hour and a half of construction. That's perhaps slightly above even my level of. I don't even know what it would be called. That's slightly above even my level. Here. I watched this one. And then we'll play some games.
Airport. It's an older, shorter, wingtipless variant of the 737, configured to operate as a private jet for a Texas oil company, and it just barely fits under the airport's maximum width requirements. Unless something changes, and soon, it will retain that largest landing record forever. That's because this airport, just 5 minutes out of the famous glitzy ski town of Aspen, is stuck in limbo between an ultimatum by the federal government and a local voter base reluctant to give in to Washington's demands. Aspen is known for
Understandable.
many things: great skiing, cosmopolitan amenities, celebrity sightings. Long considered one of North America's premier ski destinations, it's home to Michelin-starred restaurants and seemingly far over-indexed in designer stores for a town of less than 10,000 permanent residents. Yet, while the town has grown in acclaim, population, and opulence over the decades, the Aspen-Pitkin County Airport has remained largely the same. Its passenger terminal, once acclaimed as the first building in the US to use passive solar heating, opened in 1976 and hasn't changed much since. Its runway, meanwhile, was last widened in 1983. And it's this very element that's central to its current quagmire. For decades, this runway, and the idea of making it bigger, has been a point of local contention. 30 years ago, a proposed expansion failed in part because of widespread fear and loathing towards bringing bigger planes here, specifically 737s, largely voiced and led by the famous gonzo journalist Hunter S. Thompson. This created a problem. Without expansion, the airport couldn't allow bigger, newer planes, and the planes it could allow weren't enough to meet growing demand and the changing fleet mixes of commercial airlines. So, in 1999, the Federal Aviation Administration approved a modification of standards that allowed the airport to operate as a Design Group 3 airport, essentially permitting it to operate with planes larger than the physical layout of the airport would normally allow, but they'd have to add some caveats. You see, Aspen Airport is nestled in a narrow valley 8,000 feet or 2,500 meters above sea level. That makes it the second highest commercial airport in the US. Flat land barely exists here in the middle of the Rocky Mountains' most formidable peaks. Flat-ish land was artificially leveled to create the airport in the first place, but the spot used is still stuck between mountains to the west and a river to the east. So under those constraints, the separation between the airport's taxiway and runway is just 320 feet or 100 meters, far less than the 400 or 120 normally required for an airport to earn a Design Group 3 classification. To maintain safe separation between planes on the taxiway and planes on the runway, the FAA therefore requires that the airport caps its maximum wingspan at 95 feet or 29 meters, rather than the typical 118 allowed in Design Group 3. 95 feet is not much in terms of aircraft wingspans. It excludes every single mainline aircraft in United, American, and Delta's fleets, and plenty of regional jets as well. But there are plenty of other constraints too, imposed by the unique geography surrounding the airport combined with the thin, high-altitude air. For example, aircraft need certain high-performance capabilities to ensure they're able to safely clear the mountains to the south of the runway when conducting an aborted landing at the last minute due to wind shear or other issues. Similarly, commercial pilots need special training to operate in said terrain and with all the exceptional features of the airport. For example, uniquely, departing aircraft take off towards landing aircraft rather than away, like at almost every other commercial airport. And
that is very
aircraft
unusual.
Descend at a rather dramatic rate of up to 6% rather than the 3% more commonly used. So, in practice, combining all these constraints, the aircraft and airlines operating in Aspen have been narrowed down to one and one: the CRJ-700 by SkyWest Airlines. SkyWest is then a subcontractor that operates flights under the Delta, American, or United brands on their behalf. But despite all its uniqueness, at the end of the day, bureaucratically, Aspen Airport is just another one of the 5,200 public use airports in the US, each of which are regulated and overseen by the Federal Aviation Administration. Every one of those public use airports is part of the wide network of the National Integrated Plan of Airports, which makes them eligible for federal money. The FAA funds in two ways. First, through entitlements, which is money doled out to all airports based on traffic and the federal piece of the pie they are entitled to receive, and then discretionary, which comes in the form of grants and selective funding. Since 1982, the Aspen Airport has received $116.5 million from the FAA, and in the past 2 years, $12 million has been allocated just for runway repairs. And of course, there are strings attached to the money that the FAA gives. In this case, they're called grant assurances. It's in this 20-page document that the agency lays out its desires to make sure its investments are solid and also funding projects the way they want them to be funded. For example, number 19 says the airport will operate in a, quote, safe and serviceable system. This has proved a problem for Aspen because its runway, its single runway that services all traffic, both inbound and outbound, is teetering on unsafe. It closed for 2 weeks in May 2022, then another 2 in 2023 for repaving projects on the taxiway and runway that were completed to meet the FAA's grant obligations. At the time, officials pulled out a 14-inch runway core sample, and the bottom 7 inches of it fell apart when it was extracted, indicating not only surface issues, but confirming sub-gradient degradation, especially in the area of the runway where planes typically land. Then, in 2024, the runway closed for 3 more weeks for more repairs, crack sealing, repaving, and pavement replacement in specific areas like here and here. Airports constantly undergo maintenance, with major hubs repaving their own runways nearly every decade. But typically this is done at night and staggered in phases to maintain at least some operations. Shutting down entirely, like in Pitkin County, is far rarer. But because the repairs are primarily superficial, future extended closures and unexpected ones are all but guaranteed if the runway is not fully replaced. The FAA doesn't want to keep doing this. In fact, they've said this outright. Quote, "With the expenditure of $18.5 million on runway maintenance, we will not invest additional funding to maintain the existing runway and taxiway pavement. The next FAA investment will be to reconstruct the runway in the location shown on the approved ALP." Basically, they're not going to give any more money to fix the runway. They'll only pay to replace it. But the county has a plan for this. It's called the Airport Layout Plan. In fact, its approved ALP, the one currently filed with the FAA, who approves all ALPs, included a new green terminal with fewer gates, a sound berm, increased parking, and a widened runway with a separation of 400 feet from the taxiway compared to the existing 320 feet. These plans were approved by county commissioners in 2015 and then by the FAA in 2016. But what should have been case closed and development plans put into place was then really only the beginning. It's all down to these 80 feet. That's because with 400-foot separation, the airport would get upgraded to a full Design Group 3 status. No modification of standards necessary. Therefore, any aircraft with a wingspan under 118 feet could fly here without restriction. So if they wanted to, and performance characteristics allowed, United Airlines, for example, could start flying comparatively massive 737s to Aspen. Regardless of any sort of local legislation, nothing could stop the airline, as the FAA prohibits any sort of discrimination of aircraft type beyond that necessary due to the physical constraints of an airport. This is the potential future that has residents up in arms. Locally, a hot-button debate has set off between the two futures. One where the runway and taxiway stay where they are, and one where they're moved 80 feet further apart. The core of one side's argument is the simple fact that the FAA has intimated that a lack of redevelopment would mean the airport, quote, would never receive additional FAA funding. But outside of the FAA's demands, there are other potential benefits to allowing bigger planes. When Pitkin County surveyed community members for what they wanted in a new airport, a key goal was reducing greenhouse gas emissions. In fact, community members suggested negotiating with the FAA and airlines to only bring airplanes with lower carbon emissions and noise pollution than the CRJ-700. Supporters argued that allowing wider wingspans is essential for reducing greenhouse gas emissions altogether, and that it's not even clear the 737s can handle flying in and out of Aspen. The current preferred replacement for the CRJ-700, the Embraer 175, is a Class 3 jet that can theoretically land here under the modification of standards. After a long process of certification and software modifications to gain the performance characteristics needed for operation here, United has announced it will begin service to Aspen on the E175 in winter 2024, but this aircraft type is more polluting than the CRJ-700. So proponents argue that bigger wingspans could allow commercial carriers to introduce better models to the market. The Airbus A220, for example, has a slightly bigger passenger load than the Embraer and could boast less than half of the per passenger mile carbon emissions than the CRJ-700. Moreover, it's a newer airplane model that's quieter than the CRJ-700 and might offer Aspen access to further markets thanks to its longer range. Both sides do ultimately agree that the airport's terminal should be upgraded. Currently, up to 8 jets can sit on the ground simultaneously. And the new terminal proposal won't increase its size. In fact, it could have room for 6 or 8 jets, depending on the size. That's because community members and Pitkin County officials recommended introducing flex gates to the terminal. Essentially, the terminal could scale down to accommodate bigger jets like the Airbus A220, which would occupy 2 spaces, or scale up for smaller jets. by limiting the number of commercial jets that would come through here, this new terminal would limit the airport's commercial service capacity regardless of the FAA's access requirements, which has made it amenable to a broader audience. It's a rare win-win-win proposal. A new terminal could support Aspen's environmentalist ethos, improve passengers' airport experience, and intuitively limit the airport's traffic, all of which has made it a rare point of consensus among the airport stakeholders. But that's where consensus ends. Leading the opposition is a group called Aspen Flight-Right. This organization contends that the county doesn't actually need to build a bigger airport, it could just build a better one. Aspen Flight-Right is concerned about the effect those 80 feet would have on noise, pollution, and eventual crowding as development potentially creeps up in the Aspen area as more people are flown in. They question the need for a bigger airport and the motives behind it. After all, Gulfstream 650s, which have a wingspan of 99 feet, would be newly granted access to Aspen if the airport is widened. And the 650s are popular among Aspen's elite, with some news outlets reporting that more than 30 people with real estate ties to the area are also owners of the $60 million plane. Taxpayers don't need to foot the bill for larger private planes to access Aspen, the group says. They think the private flyers should do so. Instead of relocating the runway, Aspen Flight argues that the county could simply
wait, hold on, what?
private planes to access Aspen, the group says. They think the private flyers should do so. Instead of relocating the runway,
that the private flyers should pay for it. That's
replace the current one in its spot, continue with status quo modification of standards, and in the linchpin of the argument, do it all without federal funding. To do so, they say the county could take over the operations of the airport's fixed base operator, essentially the facilities used for private jets, from Atlantic Aviation, who runs the lucrative business right now and earn $19 to $20 million per year, more than enough to fund repairs and future improvements. The idea of operating a commercial airport in America without FAA funding is essentially unheard of. The idea of an American commercial airport being a profitable venture without outside money is essentially unprecedented. But the idea of operating your own FBO isn't. All Aspen needs to do is look to Jackson, Wyoming, its northern counterpart with similar trends in air traffic and management, most specifically, a massively high ratio of private jet operations to commercial ones. Its county purchased the private aviation side of its airport for $26 million and assumed operations upon purchase. This year, it's projected to earn $5 million in revenue, according to county budget reports. So the situation that Aspen Flight-Right proposes, playing chicken with the FAA, would be unprecedented, but on the other hand, if anyone could make this unprecedented scenario work, it would be Aspen. While on the commercial side it's a fairly small regional airport, it sees some of the highest private jet traffic of any airport in the world, beating the numbers of countless cities orders of magnitude larger. And Aspen Flight-Right isn't the only group fighting against the expanded layout. There's also Citizens Against Bigger Planes. Whereas Flight-Right's tactic is to function as a nonprofit that advocates for its preferred redevelopment alternative, Citizens Against Bigger Planes wants the electorate, the roughly 13,000 registered voters in Aspen, Snowmass, Woody Creek, and beyond, to help make the choice, and to do that, they've put it on the November ballot. The group collected enough signatures for a successful citizen petition that asks to amend the county's charter, taking away the county commissioner's right to approve the runway expansion, and instead handing that decision to the voters, making them the only ones with the power to approve an expansion. But not to be outdone or see their power stripped, the Board of County Commissioners mounted their own defense by drafting ballot language that amends the same county charter to reaffirm their exclusive authority to approve runway expansion. Essentially, there are two competing and contradictory ballot measures. So there's a vote to maintain the status quo and a vote to set up another vote. Simultaneously, there's a web of competing interests. Beyond the duo of anti-expansion groups, there's a third, the Coalition for a 21st Century Airport, comprised of local leaders, former council and commissioner members, and business executives in favor of the approval of the updated ALP with the widened separation. And on top of that, there's accusations of misinformation by all sides and disagreement on basic facts. For example, each side postures that their vision for the future will lead to lower emissions and less noise pollution, while nobody can agree on whether the current modification of standards would be removed and the airport downgraded if the runway were rebuilt in place. The voter base, meanwhile, is faced with a deluge of highly technical information relating to the intricacies of FAA grant funding, ALPs, aircraft design groups, and more. If it all seems confusing, it is. There are facts, and then there are feelings behind the facts, and ultimately it's a tricky decision between a certain future with what some considered undesired consequences, or an uncertain one with unknown consequences. As the electorate waits to decide on their preferred path forward, the implications of inaction are mounting up. For example, the second closest major airline hub to Aspen, behind United's in Denver, is Delta's in Salt Lake City. Back in 2019, the airline operated as many as 3 flights a day from the city, allowing easy, geographically convenient access to the broader Delta network. But come 2020 and the COVID pandemic, the airline cut service to Aspen altogether as it elected to ground its CRJ-700 fleet as a cost-saving measure, leaving no aircraft left in its fleet to service the airport. While service has since returned, the airline has been steadily reducing its CRJ-700 fleet and has cited this as to why it no longer services Aspen from Salt Lake City. Rather, only the less geographically convenient Los Angeles and Atlanta hubs. While this issue could theoretically be rectified with the upcoming introduction of E-175 service to Aspen, other consequences are permanent. For example, in September, the airport missed out on a slice of $100 million in federal funding that could have been used to reduce the cost of redevelopment, since the FAA considered them ineligible for the grant due to a lack of an approved ALP. And the lack of an ALP in funding therefore means the runway is continuing to degrade. Airport leadership has said that the longer they go without a replacement, the more frequent the closures for maintenance could become, and the less predictable the closures would be. This opens up the potential that maintenance would need to happen not in the spring or fall off-seasons when tourists are rare, but perhaps in the midst of winter, cutting off tourist access and therefore cutting out the core of the area's economy. The tale of Aspen Airport is a familiar one in America. Federal and state governments are substantially responsible for infrastructure development in this country, and they believe they know best. But there are plenty of instances where these larger forms of government have gotten it wrong. Interstates bifurcating communities in two, or dams that create environmental catastrophes. Local electorates also believe they know best about what infrastructure is best in their local area, but there are also plenty of instances where they've got it wrong. Train lines rerouted far beyond the direct path, or parking spots prioritized over bike lanes. But through the process of sorting through the dispute of who has it right and wrong, everyone can lose. In Aspen, everyone wants a new terminal, everyone wants a rebuilt runway, yet neither can happen until the county can decide on the full plan. What's going on right now sounds on the surface like the right thing to do. It's the process of determining which version of this piece of infrastructure is going to make the most number of people happy, but in a scenario where everyone can lose, it poses a question as to who and how many should be involved in determining the best path forward. Whatever the answer is, it appears, when comparing the state of this country's airports, bridges, transit systems, and more to those around the world, that whatever the American answer is, it just isn't the right one. The 2 airport ballot measures in Pitkin County are just one small part of a very big, very consequential American election. Nebula is hoping to help guide you through this tumult through its brand new original show, What to Follow USA. Each week, the team from TLDR News releases another episode designed to be the election news that appeals to you, at least the statistical average of who you, the viewer, is, which, if you're wondering, is a relatively young person who uses the internet a lot and also is on top of the major headlines of the election. Therefore, the show focuses more on deeper analysis and the stories that you haven't heard about but are worth knowing about. And this is just one part of a huge catalog of top-quality Nebula originals. In fact, last Friday, the 13th, Nebula released its latest fiction piece, Dracula's Ex-Girlfriend by Abigail Thorne. At the time of recording this, I actually haven't seen it yet since it's not done, but...
Alright. Let's get stuff shifted over. Let me see what games we both have. Let's see. Let's see, so we got content warning, Dead by Daylight, Forewarned, Golf with Friends, Goose Duck, Inside the Backrooms, Left 4 Dead 2, Lethal Company, oh dear, Phasmo, Plate Up, Stardew, War Thunder, Warhammer. Is there anything that stands out to you, Star, that you were wanting to play? Let's see. Like I said earlier, if Rebozo's around, we could always play Plate Up together, get the three of us together and run a restaurant again. It's been a moment. But let's see. Ones that I don't have installed that we both have. Lethal could be fun, so could DBD. Let's see. Rebozo, are you here, my friend? I know you were here earlier. If you're still here, my friend, then there is an open offer. You need only to claim it. And let me hop into a VC. Or we will here in a moment. Gotta scroll through a few things. Getting rid of all these things. Got too many notifications. I don't know how there are always so many. Alright, there we go. Hopped into a VC. Star, if you would wish to hop into one, I can drag you into here. I'm not seeing Rebozo. Let me shoot him a DM real quick. Let's see. Alright, shot him a DM. We shall see if he responds. If not, so be it. There's Bambi. Hello.
You know what that
Bambi.
means? Fish.
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 What?
Fish.
Can't believe you would come in here into my place and fish me.
I fish you.
Outrageous.
I fish you. I should probably go let my father know not to come in here and say things he's not supposed to.
Please do not bomb me. I have done nothing wrong.
Oh, you should.
Rebozo's still at work. That's most unfortunate.
Dang. Oh yeah, no, do you want to see my new glasses?
Sure.
Use your brains to around here, or just get shown in the corner by the guy behind you.
Let's get that. Alright then. So, you said DBD or lethal then, yeah?
Yes, I think I still have both downloaded right now. I've been
Yeah,
clearing
that
out
part
my
I can't.
games so that I can play
That
Big
part I
Boys.
can't see. I can't see what you have downloaded, but I do have the ability to see what we both have that's multiplayer.
Yep, same here. I'm gonna go let my dad know.
Alright, friend.
I'm also gonna have to text Nathan so that he doesn't come in here and do the same thing. Because he's coming home from work early. Because they
Please,
got
no
rained out
bomb.
today.
No bomb, please. I've done nothing.
I did nothing wrong.
I didn't do nothing, bro. Let's see. Oh, we both have Inside the Backrooms as well. I've not actually played that one yet. That could be an interesting one to do. So we shall have to see. That could be one of the ways to go, though. Of course, I also don't know how big that file is if she doesn't have it downloaded.
What are you talking about? Can I get a damn cupcake?
No.
Huh?
No.
I can't?
Nope.
This is...
Okay, well then fine. You can't eat anything else.
Okay.
No te lo you, Pierre!
Okay.
Uh-oh. So, I see we both also have Inside the Backrooms. I've not
I
played
do
that
not have that one downloaded, but I do believe that it should not take that long to download. So
Yeah, let's see. How big is that one?
It's 7.23 gigabytes. We'll be fine.
Oh, okay. And then we
It
can
should
try that. That
take
should be
that long.
interesting.
My computer, big beefy boy. Oh yeah, let's go.
Fingers crossed I shall be joining you in that category sooner rather than later. I will not be restrained to a tiny laptop. Ah, that I'd be joining you in the category of having a... Yes. I am currently in the works with
let's go.
With Rico to build a computer because a anonymous member of my community donated an obscenely large amount of money towards getting me a computer and kind of blindsided me with it.
My.
Yeah. So right now our current plan is we're holding off until Black Friday with the money to try to stretch it as far as we can to get a better build than I would have been able to normally afford. So that's the current operation.
Yeah, no, that's smart.
I'm looking forward to it.
I'm just trying to... I'm starting my subathon today because I'm going to, once the 15th rolls around, I'm not going to be around very much for like 2 weeks as I'm settling into the new apartment.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Groceries are going to be annoying.
I mean, fair. Hopefully, if things go well tomorrow, hopefully the price of food will go back down a little bit because I can't do another 4 years of this kind of pricing on food, y'all. I'm gonna have to become I'll have to adopt the communist diet of just don't eat.
Simply just do not.
It's the most effective diet.
You know, just do not.
Communism is good for one thing. Diets. Not much else. But if you need to lose weight,
it doesn't do anything else.
No. Well, I suppose it also kills a lot of people. So if you're trying to like depopulate and lose weight, communism, great for those. Outside of that, not so much.
Outside of that, it ain't good for nothing.
Yep, basically.
I can close all of these tabs now. Wait, I can't close that one. I have to save. There we go. Now I can close this tab. That's smart.
That is always the worst. You click out of something and then you're like, oh no, I didn't save.
Oh shoot, no. I didn't save.
Yeah, that's like the worst feeling. Oh, it's just like, what do I do now? This is...
Well, crap. But you're just sitting there and you're like, well, crap.
Well, I've played myself. I've done the most terrible
Have
thing.
you ever wanted to play yourself?
I don't recommend it.
I don't remember if this is capable of using the controller or not.
There we inside the back room. What should
inside the rooms?
Blake, it depends. What are you trying to use it for again? Because that kind of would make the difference in my book on, like, do you want... Is it just something for show? Practicing throwing it? I would probably go with wood. You get a better weight out of it than stainless steel. Stainless steel's going to be way different in its weight distribution, most likely. It also depends if
I didn't know you knew how to forge.
Are you practicing throwing it for, like, competition? Is there going to be a type of spear that you have to throw? Because if so, I would make it as close to whatever that is. Like, if it's a competition thing, make your practice one as close to the competition one as possible. As practice makes perfect.
I'm allowed to use my controller with this game. I do now. I'm not smuggling.
I have no idea.
There, man.
Alright, so 2 players, normal, private.
Oh. Count 2.
They have generic spear with a wooden shaft as far as you're aware. Your headed will be fancier though for display purposes. Yeah, if it's a competition type thing and they're using wooden shafts, I would definitely go with wooden shaft then. Since you want it as close to that as possible, because if you practice with something else, then you're learning that practice item versus learning what you're actually going to be using, because they're not going to perform the same. They'll not even perform the same if they're different types of wood. So I would definitely, if it's a wood shaft spear that they're using, I would practice with wood. It would be best if you could find out what kind of wood they're using, that way you could use that. But if you can't find it out, at least wood's going to replicate it closer in feel and weight than stainless steel is. Though stainless steel probably going to survive longer. Pretty sure they use oak. Most likely. That's a pretty normal use. The normal one to go for would be something like oak. It's reliable. Game summary. So we'll be in the lobby, 10 lives, normal damage, normal stamina, 5-minute time limit to revive. Level entities, entity number, like the dash sign twice. I see. I have no idea what that means. If I click start game, because this isn't like a game lobby yet.
I thought you were about to say, I have crippling depression.
I mean, I could go that route, but I'm just not gonna do that today. Let's see what happens whenever I hit start game. Is this like a lobby or are we... Okay, cool. So we're waiting still. Oh my. I am quite yeah. Quite the fellow. Shoot you an invite, and I guess we're hanging out in here now. Look how fancy these couches are, chat. So nice. Can I change or...
You get the fancy couches?
I can be a skeleton. Some interesting outfit options here. I can be homeless. Glorious.
I don't think anyone would do that by choice.
You can't tell me what I would and wouldn't do. I'm spoopy. We're gonna rattle them, boys. Those entities ain't gonna stand a chance. I like that our head doesn't move.
You're just not allowed to move, okay?
No. Oh. 4 days late on that one? Shh, it's never too late to be spooky.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, hold on. So oh good, there is settings. So I can come over here and there's gotta be a way to mouse sensitivity. Thank the Lord. That doesn't feel like it made any difference at all. Oh, because I didn't apply it. That's why.
Real crap.
What are we well crapping? Ah, there we go.
Everything is taking forever and a half to load right now, and I can't tell whether it's because of the fact that the Ethernet cable is not plugged into the router at the moment, or what. Spongy boy.
And
Are you having problems because I'm not plugged into the Ethernet cable? Having issues.
Okay,
It's not happy
where's
with
the
me.
homeless
Stop
guy?
having issues and not being happy with me.
There he is.
Homeless people.
Ah.
That's all I have to say. Homeless people.
Yes.
Yes. We're almost at 90%. It's almost there.
She's getting there.
It'll be done momentarily.
I can't be the plague doctor. This is sad. What the? Don't like that. What the heck? No need to apologize, Uncle Dan. Your presence is appreciated. I'm wondering if there's just no stamina in the game in general, or is it just because we're in the lobby right now? Because I'm sprinting into this mirror aggressively and never running out, so.
You're just stuck in the mirror. It's fine.
I will make this mirror submit with my face.
Submit to my will.
You will break before I do.
I don't want to launch the VR compatibility. My VR is currently put in a box.
No, be VR. Be the VR you were meant to be. I don't know what the implication
Be
of
the
that
VR
is.
inside.
Let me in! Let me into the mirror! You can't hide the secrets from me. I know they're on the other side. If this is like a one-way mirror, someone's just sitting on the other end of this, staring at a skeleton, aggressive.
Hey, Joseph, I think your site's having technical difficulties. Oh, up it's back.
Oh, did my stream go down? Okay. I see.
Yeah, for like just a few seconds.
Okay, well. My apologies,
Just look happy.
everyone. Hopefully these issues will not be as common once we have a computer built. Should hopefully negate these ongoing issues. Maybe? Then again, maybe not, because it could just be an internet-related thing, and if it's an internet-related thing, I don't know what to tell you, chat. I'll send you another invite.
Yay. I like how it says it was not designed to support controllers, but it's allowing me to play with my controller. It makes no sense.
Need a second internet connection as a backup, preferably satellite. I wish I could set something up, but I live in an old apartment building, and Cox Internet has unfairly and illegally bullied every company that could compete against it out of the area. But since it technically isn't the only internet company in existence, it's not technically violating monopoly laws, even though it is effectively violating monopoly laws by unfairly bullying all of its competition out of our area, leaving us with only one option.
Okay, hold.
But you know, that's okay.
I'm sorry. Hold on. Hold on.
Uh-huh.
What's the name of the internet?
Cox Internet. COX.
Nice.
Yeah. You don't like Cox? I don't either, Blake. They're a terrible company and they do terrible things and they get away with it because they're not technically breaking the law. Technically. Have you gotten either of the invites I sent you, friend?
No, I haven't.
What on? Let's see.
I also have Comcast. Comcast isn't much better. They suck too.
A lot of companies
Let
are.
me in.
Okay, I've sent you a third one.
Let me in. Game. Please.
If not, maybe you set up a lobby and try inviting me? Maybe? I don't know.
Let me in. Let me in. Open the door.
Open the door.
Open the door.
Let me through this mirror.
You are very bound and determined to get through there, aren't you?
I know that they are hiding secrets on the other side. Their cookies are forfeit the moment I get through this barrier.
Oh, I have played this game. Okay. That explains why I have what I have. We go to the lobby. We start the lobby. Okay. Invite player. Invite Joseph. Let Joseph in the game.
Let me in. Let me in.
I don't want to be a man.
You will be a man.
I don't wanna.
We'll make a man out of you.
Oh shoot, Mulan?
I have arrived.
Oh look, there's a skeleton behind me. How do I change what I look like? I do not wish to be a man. I do not wish to be a man in a fancy suit.
They will let me through.
Let me in. Oh, there we go. I figured it out. Wait, I can be homeless?
Yup. You can just choose to be homeless in this game. It's great. Or a skeleton. Or whatever that is. Also, I can't stop walking, so.
It's like, ha.
I am perma walk. So I'm just gonna Terminator walk into this mirror.
It's constantly Terminator walk.
They will let me in.
Where is my mouse? I don't know where my mouse is.
Oh no.
It does not. Oh, there we go. Officer, I could be a police. I could. Why am I bald? Why am I bald?
I can only assume that it's specifically because you're wearing a hat. And most games, they don't, they treat hat and hair as the same thing. It's like the same item slot, essentially. So a lot of games, it's like, you can't have both.
Bald. Oh, hair like skeleton.
Yeah. The calcium squad is here.
You can't tell what I am. I am existing. I'm a skeleton. We must walk into this mirror.
They will let us in.
You ready?
Yeah, sure. Let's go. Hopefully, it will let me stop walking now.
No, absolutely not.
I am the one who walks. I'm still walking. Let's go. It never ends.
Water. No.
Oh, I can stop walking.
Almond water. Almond water. Are you wounded? Cure yourself by drinking almond water.
Anti-anxiety pills. Oh my god. They know just what I need. A flashlight. Woo. Oh wait, I'm not a skeleton anymore. Why am I not a skeleton anymore? You're still a skeleton.
Yeah, you're a skeleton on my screen.
Oh, whenever I hold the flashlight up, I've got like a normal man hand.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, it's just on your side that you look like that. I got a radio. I don't know why I would need this.
I don't either.
How about drop it?
Dang, who made a mess over here? Well, did you just whistle?
I think so. I don't know how I did that.
I don't either, but you startled me a wee bit, not gonna lie. Skeleton squad, move out!
Hi. Time to die, I am the sacrifice.
The potassium gang has arrived!
Well, here to mess with you. Oh, can I go in here? I thought this was a mirror.
Room 1.
Room 1.
Almond water.
Water?
What are you talking about?
Water?
Hey, there's stairs over here. They don't go nowhere.
They go absolutely nowhere, but you could go up them. I'm like halfway in the roof right now.
Let me into the roof. As skeletons, it is our job to encounter surfaces and immediately attempt to breach said surface. What the heck is this area?
I want to go in here. Let me in.
Ah, Z.
Let me in.
Aha.
Z? Figure out what button that is for me. Go in. That's good. Aha.
I got more almond water and anxiety pills.
You got the anxiety medications?
Medication? Yeah.
Medication? Oh, hey. No, give me the med. Give me the meds. It gave me the meds.
Oh, uh-oh. I saw the noodles.
A noodle?
Yeah, I saw noodles walking around. I forget what Valmont called him.
Noodly boy? You noodle?
Where you at, Noodle? I saw you. I saw you creeping around.
Come over. Come over. Come over. Come over.
Where the real scary thing? Bones.
We are bones.
Yeah, we don't have no muscles or nothing. We just calcium.
I like being calcium.
Why can't I crawl sideways? Why do you restrict my movement so?
Because no.
I don't know where
Absolutely
you
not.
went, but what's in here? Escape. Escape.
I hear him coming.
That's inappropriate of him. There's a knockdown ladder over there.
I heard him stomping around.
That's a dead end.
Let me out! Let me out!
I'm gonna hide in this room because it says escape.
Escape.
It's kind of spelled like escape.
Oh. I think I just saw you run by. Is that you? Oh, yes, that's you. Okay, hi,
Hello.
friend. It didn't want to let me out of the room for a moment.
No escape for you.
Clearly not. There you out in. Let me in.
Dang, it's dark. Jiminy Cricket, who turned out the lights? Room 4.
Are you finding things?
There wasn't anything in here. Oh, wait, what's it? There's a picture of a
I
cat.
found more meds.
I found a cat picture. Everything
You
is
found
okay
cat?
now.
Does it say hang on?
No, but it should. Have a look at this. Cat photo.
Oh, look. Cat. That is a beautiful cat. Oh, room 4. I don't know what that means, but
I don't either. There's a vent here.
is there?
Yeah, on the ceiling there. Can you see my flashlight when I turn it on, or is it just lighting up for me?
It is on for both of us.
Okay, cool.
So it says not exclusive lighting.
That's good. Noodles.
Where's
This is where we started.
Spindle? I'm just gonna call him Spindle for now.
I'm calling him
Spindly
Noodles. Hey, there's Noodles.
Oh, come on, buddy.
What's all
Hi,
this?
buddy. Noodle-proof walls. I'm hoping, at least. Oh, hey, here's where I found more anxiety meds.
Hey!
I got meds. I put the medication in my system.
Medication.
Medication in my system. Oh,
Ooh,
hey, look, more
doors.
stairs.
Oh, these are locked.
Hey, look, stairs.
Do these stairs go somewhere? Oh my god, they go somewhere. Glorious.
Let me in.
Need a screwdriver. Ray.
What if I don't want a screwdriver in the door?
Oh, I don't wanna. You can't make me.
I don't want
Oh. You look so.
What do I look like?
I am become Skeleturtle. That's such a weird animation. I love it.
You ever just wanted to crawl around on the floor?
There's Noodles over there. I don't know what he's up to, but
He's having a good time all by himself. What the?
how do I get out of this? There we go. You can interact
Can
with
I-
it, but I couldn't actually do anything. I was just clicking on it and it didn't do nothing. There's another pair of double doors over there.
Let me in. Where's door?
What
Oh, wait, no.
the?
Box.
Hey, I can't open it, but room 3, unknown temperature. Room 4, unknown temperature. Room 2,
Hey, look,
unknown
meds.
temperature. Room 1, unknown temperature.
We don't know what temperature the rooms are. We
Nah.
just vibe.
We're skeletons. We can't feel temperature.
That makes sense.
I'm missing my meat suit, so I don't know what's going on. What is this?
Okay. So we
No
can't open
exit.
the
Ooh, screwdriver.
We're gonna go back to the stairs.
Let's go.
Where are the stairs?
This way.
We're in the stairs. Gonna crawl up the stairs.
Okay, apparently if we run too long, our vision gets tunneled.
I'm doing the haha funny up the stairs. You know, like that one gremlin maneuver you do as a kid where you have to run up the stairs on all fours?
Yeah.
That's what this is. It's a slow mode of transportation, but it works. Okay, I'm gonna try to go this way, see if there's anything this way.
Alright.
Oh!
What happened?
Oh, hey! I found a card and more medication.
Oh.
And a dead person. I found a dead person.
I suppose I should try some of these,
Can I get out of here? Am I allowed? Nope. Oh. Oh, it let me out anyways. It said it was locked and then let me out.
It's very dark in here.
I don't like where I'm at.
I'll go back in the vent. Come on, friend.
I can't get back in the vent.
Which one did you go down? The first one?
Yeah, the first one.
Oh, yeah, because you dropped down. I see.
Yeah.
Should I drop
can't
down
get back
there and
up.
join you, or should I keep going, you think?
I don't know. I'm stuck.
Oh, are there any doors or anything?
There are several doors in here, but I just don't know which ones do what. Ooh, what are you?
I'm still up
What are
here
you?
in the vent. I'm just kind of looking down. No!
I have
I got
moth
slightly too
jelly.
close to the edge. So now I'm down here.
I have something called moth jelly.
Moth jelly? Yummy.
Moth jelly.
Hi, friend.
Hello, can you let me in?
What was
Let
that?
me in. I think there's a vent to that one too, and that has a card in it.
Oh, here's the double doors.
Yeah.
Ah!
Oh, it lets you out.
Yeah, and then you whistled again. Scaring the daylights out of me, friend.
Let me go in the tunnel.
And I crawl.
Okay, we gotta find out which one goes.
When you're crouch walked, you're like clipping through the ceiling. It looks so weird.
I like being a clipping in the ceiling.
And I crawl. I crawl so far away. What's down here?
I tried jumping down again.
Oh. I'm in one of the cells now.
Does it have a dead body?
Yeah.
Yes, it does. Take the card.
Give me that. And that. Thank you.
Here's something moving around.
I can hear you walking around in the vent up there.
I hear something stump stomping.
It's probably me because I'm down below you.
You gotta like how my
Hi, friend.
What's come to say hello to you?
Get in the hole, get in the hole, get in the hole. Noodles, go away. Bro, what's this music he's playing? Burr, 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 burr. I didn't expect this guy to come over here and start beatboxing. He's musically inclined.
Listen, he's a tad bit spatial.
Bam, 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 bam. I can't squeeze past. Let me through.
Maybe if we back away, he'll go away.
Well, I'm going down this way, I guess. Let's see what's down here.
Have fun.
Whee!
He's still over here kind of beatboxing a little bit.
Yeah, I'm down in one of the cells now. Oh, he's
He's
beatboxing
going
slower.
I think he's going to you.
Ah.
I think, at least. I can't tell.
I'm gonna use these pills. Maybe.
I don't hear him anymore.
Is it because I'm still, like, crouched? Is that why I can't do it? No.
I think it's more of the you don't need to yet.
Maybe.
I don't know what constitutes you needing to use your medication.
Okay, so I got a yellow card, which the information is yellow card, green card, information, green card. Good to know. I got my green card. I'm allowed to work now. Woo!
I have the red one, access card for electronic red door.
I like that yours actually says something. Mine just says like if I click on information, it's like green card, information, green card, and I'm like, ah, informative.
I landed on a dead body.
Oh, did you drop down into one of the cells?
Yes, I did.
Okay, well, I'm waiting over by the doors. I'm gonna shut the
Hey,
doors
there's
just
one-
in case. I don't know if he can open
There's
them,
one
but
more. There's one more in this last sub.
Oi.
Oh,
stop.
I figured it out.
What button is it? Oh wait, you're on something else, so it
I
doesn't
don't
matter.
know if I press in on my thingy, it is that.
Well, we got a bunch of cards now.
I'm gonna go try to get that last one.
Okay. I
I'm
have
just gonna
no
keep
idea.
dropping myself on my own head until I figure it out.
A valiant plan, to be certain.
Listen. I'm a little special. It's okay.
Okay, so the screwdriver doesn't help with the boarded up stuff.
Dang. Do we maybe need a hammer?
Or a crowbar, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Ooh, I got it. I got it on first try. I've got the blue one now. What does the blue one say? Blue card.
What is your information, blue card? Blue. Ah.
My information for you is blue. Where was that second set of double? Spindly boy,
Matte
go
color
away.
insert cards.
I'm hiding in a cell right now because Spindly boy is here.
Oh, hey, I got that that other double door open.
Hey, nice. I'm having to just chill out in a cell right now.
You having a good time?
Yeah, totally.
Is he
Mr.
beatboxing
Noodleman
for you
wants-
at least?
He's very slowly.
Ah. Oh,
It's
no,
very
it's
slow
this
beatbox.
area.
What is that?
And I wait. Friend, are you free yet? Or is he still... Is he bogarting you?
I'm gonna go see. I'm brave.
I believe in you. You're brave, Strawberry dear.
Let me out of the ding dang cell.
Stop having the cell be closed. Let me out.
I just want my freedom, sir.
Well, hi there, bud. Bye, bud.
What?
He just walked past. I'm looking out the window on the door, and he just kind of beep, 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 right past. And I'm just like, oh.
Hey.
Well,
I
hi,
found a
friend.
ledge. I'm standing on a ledge.
That means he's not Bogart yet anymore, at least. You can get over here now. Because I got these doors open, and it seems like it goes to the next area.
Okay. I do not remember which way that is. Oh, wait. Is he near you anymore?
No, the lights aren't flickering anymore, so I presume that means he is wandered off.
I'm on a ledge right now. Oop.
No unauthorized access allowed. Well, I'm probably
There we
not
go.
authorized, but I got the door open anyway. Gonna shut that behind us.
Yay! We're
Shut
free.
the door behind us. What's up here? Oh. Starberry is dead.
Hold on. Let me out. Let me back to the land of the living.
Open gate.
Oh crap. Where did it spawn me at? Okay, let me have all my crap back at least.
Oh, I hear you. Hello, friend.
Hi. Hello, there's water. There's water.
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 So, there's a gate on the other end. But there's also a reset button. I'm curious. What does that do? Look like a whole lot of nothing.
I hear the steps.
Yeah, lights flickering too.
Oh. All done. My phone's pointing.
Hmm. Okay, what does this say? Read note. Pay attention to lights. What is this trying to tell me? So don't go to the spots that have a red light or no light. The no light is death. Oh. Oh. Well, howdy, Kayla. Welcome in. How you doing, friend? Let me give you a shout out right quick. It's kind of hard to see.
Okay, I'm back.
Welcome back.
If you really feel like you
just
want
needed me to unlock the door.
just don't do it while
I came down here.
So.
And it started changing. So now we got like that light game. Yeah, you might want to read that real quick.
Okay.
Seems like we have to jump on the spots where there's the red lights. No light is death. Red light means it's gonna go away. And it's like rotating. I guess we gotta get to the end.
Okay. Ah!
Well.
Okay, I have to run and jump, I guess.
Yep.
That's annoying. Also, I hear Spindly Boys, Oh!
Well. Find the luminous door and revive.
You gotta find the door that has the lights on it. Okay, so it's run and jump, not just jump.
Oh, I'm back.
Welcome back.
Is this my loot?
Oh.
Okay, yeah. It's all my stuff.
Jesus.
I'm here.
That was almost really bad.
How
I
goes the game?
overshot.
Well, I died, but you know, other than that, I jumped to my
No way.
death.
We don't want your beatboxing.
Turn the light back on. Yeah, there we go.
No!
Oh.
I failed to jump again. You can't tell I'm bad at this jumping nonsense. It seems.
That's
Okay.
a little alarming.
What?
I think we need to hit the button again, maybe? It seems like it reset. I think there might have been like a... No! Dang it!
It killed you.
I fell down the hole again.
Don't do that. I think it needs both of us to be here.
Well, I think it just... I assume it must have ran out of time. That's probably why there's the reset thing. So we gotta go back in there and hit the button again now, I guess. Let's see.
Stupid button. Hit button. You in there? You hit button?
Yeah, hit the button. Human detected in the zone. Clear the zone to proceed. Oh, that's on now. Oh. That was quick.
Hey, Boo.
Yeah?
There's a bill collector at the door wanting your money.
Oh, yeah, makes sense.
Come on, turn on one of the lights. I can actually make it.
Myself 4 times.
Well, don't do that. And
Let him in.
Wait so stinking long. No, I didn't hit the button in time. We're doing great at this.
It bounced me backward. That is some bullcrap, man.
This is not going well.
We are doing horribly.
Yeah, we're not doing great. But, you know, I believe in us.
We're not. We may be a little special, but it's okay. Finally!
No! She died, bro. No!
I maybe just shouldn't talk anymore. Maybe that's what I need to do. Don't you dare.
I've returned. Give me my stuff.
Oh.
Thank you, game.
Okay, get on the platform. Don't bounce me!
No! Star, you're gonna run out of lives, bro.
I know I am.
How many you got left?
Dude, I think it's 3.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's 3. Picking up my jelly. Okay. Get on the platform. I swear if you bounce me again, I'm going to lose it.
Lose it, it'd be funny. I look like the spitting image of Brendan.
Well.
There's one over here. Oh, no!
Bye! No! Yeah, so you can't jump to the spots that are dark at all. Not even to, like, try to get to the spots that are lit. That's no... That's no good.
Ridiculous how much the game bounces you sideways.
What game are you playing?
This is inside the background.
I assume that it just reset again.
Game or...
I don't know, actually. Oh, look, they're all lit up. Oh.
What even is the back rooms?
Yeah, it's
Why do you make noise?
inside the back rooms.
Why not make noise?
No!
What happened?
I overshot slightly and just went straight down into the pit.
We're both going to die.
Yeah, I'm down to 4.
No. Because no.
That's not an answer.
I like that we got past the first area, no issue, and then like we get here, it's just like unlimited death.
Fun.
Are you having fun?
Me?
Yes, you.
I'd be having fun.
Well, hello, Penelope. What are you doing, Kitty?
Okay, I guess I gotta reset it.
Hit the button.
I got rained out of a paycheck today.
I don't know. I got this phone.
Oh wait, hold on.
Oh,
Humans detected in the zone. You gotta get out of there.
Oh, yeah, I don't know when you did.
Yeah.
You made more?
There it goes.
That's annoying. Just. We don't count as humans. We're calcium.
I'm pure calcium. What do you mean, human?
Where'd you put the goals?
It's in the thingy where they had everyone.
I don't remember where everyone was.
Ah!
Done,
Did
done.
it?
Surveillance room.
We went two separate ways.
Oh, I could have gone forward. That'd have been way smarter. Well,
Yeah, no, I don't know where to go.
I'm committed now. Oh, bye.
Stop it!
It won't let me out. Please give me a light to go somewhere.
No. Hello. Don't.
I didn't even make it. So on your first day, you made it out of the meeting room, right?
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yep.
Odds are.
I'm making it. I'm making it.
Odds are
Yeah.
because it's looking like rain for the rest of the week.
Oh, that's not
Come
great.
on, give me a path forward.
So we may be kind of.
Give me a path forward, please. I beg of you. No!
No, go away! Go
I
away,
made it
Spindle Boy!
so far.
Go away, Whoopi.
Go away, Whoopi!
I almost made it. That's so disappointing.
No!
This ain't bad.
I can see your shadow when you're dead.
Hi, friend.
Are you out of
W.
lives?
How do you feel that I'm eating at lunch?
Are you out of
You
lives?
didn't know. Yes, I am.
May I continue eating your lunch?
I'm gonna pick up your stuff then.
Go ahead and pick up my stuff.
Huh?
I'm talking to Joseph.
May I continue eating your lunch?
Fine.
Reset
hungry,
that. Press the button to open, but I did. There we go.
I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna look through what's actually over here. There's an elevator over here.
No! I immediately.
Did you die?
Yeah, I immediately failed the first jump. Son of a gun. I'm running out of lives. 2 left.
We're both so good at this.
I love that we totally just blew through that first area, then we get here and it's just like, nothing but death.
Go, Calcium Squad, go!
Go, Milkman.
Go, Joseph, I believe in you. No!
Son of a gun.
So close!
And yet so far.
We were like halfway. Halfway there. Whoa, I'm on my last life.
Want to hear something shocking? My mom gave me recipes.
Oh.
Okay.
I actually like 3 times before now. I guess 4th was the charm.
I guess. Okay, where are you?
No!
No!
It just sometimes does not seem to care if I hit the jump button. It's just like, yeah.
It's like,
alright,
nah,
no
friend,
more
no.
lives. So if I die this time, I die for real.
The Calcium Squad.
The Calcium Squad is in dire straits.
You can do it. I believe in you, Joseph.
Let me have a path forward. It's not really forward, but I'll take it.
I'm hovering over you.
There's a joke to be made in that.
We make many jokes.
Yes. And your friends here keep me from making them.
No!
No! No!
This is so sad.
That went so well.
We did so good in the first half. No!
That was so good. That was so good.
Unparalleled success in the first half. Second half, just throwing ourselves down a hole over and over.
Well, some of it was literally because of the fact the game, it would not care that I'm hitting the button and I'm actually moving the correct direction. It would throw me like I bounced into an invisible wall.
Mine was just like I'd go to do a jump and then I hit the jump button. The game's like, no, you just walked off the edge, and I'm like, bruh, falling to my death. Like, what is this? I can't believe this, bruh.
How dare you?
I can't believe I'm falling down the hole again.
I have to get off.
Aw, darn. But alright, my friend. I appreciate you playing with us for a bit.
Indeed.
You have a wonderful rest of your day. God bless you.
You too, my friend. Bye-bye.
Alright, bye. Alright, everybody. Ah. I'm dying, don't mind me. Let's see. Do we play something else for a wee bit, or do we wrap it there? So far, the storm hasn't given us too much trouble, which is nice. It's good, it's good. Looking through what I've got, nothing really standing out to me. So I think we'll probably wrap it there. So let's see who's streaming that we could go and raid. Let's see, shall we? Who all is live? Ah, there's someone we haven't been able to raid in a minute. So, I appreciate you all coming and hanging out. It's been good fun. We shall be back again tomorrow. We'll be doing some art, working on our maps and whatnot for D&D. So, I hope to see you all there. You have a wonderful rest of your day. God bless you all. Stick around for that raid.
You communist
I just
Hummer. Fine.
passed
All
him
right,
going
all right.
90, and I drifted into his lane.
Oh no.
Oh no, you don't. Oh no, you don't.